Story 1. I exposed my sister's affair with my husband at our family reunion. A year later, they're having a baby, and my parents want me to play happy family. I, 32F, have been married to Alex, 34M, for 5 years. Our story began in college where we met during a charity event. I was volunteering at a booth for animal rescue, and Alex came by to donate. We struck up a conversation about our shared love for dogs, and things just clicked. After graduation, we started dating seriously, and 3 years later, we tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony attended by friends and family. Growing up, my relationship with my older sister, Jenna, 35F, was always complicated. We're only 3 years apart, but it often felt like we were from different planets. Jenna was the outgoing, popular one, while I was more introverted and focused on my studies. Our parents, both hardworking middle-class folks, always tried to treat us equally, but Jenna seemed to resent me for some reason. I remember one incident when I was 14 and Jenna was 17. I had just won a regional science fair, and my parents took us out to celebrate. Throughout the dinner, Jenna kept making snide remarks about how being a nerd wouldn't get me anywhere in life. When my parents scolded her, she stormed out of the restaurant. It was supposed to be my special night, but it ended with everyone feeling miserable. This pattern continued throughout our teenage years and into adulthood. When I got into a prestigious university, Jenna suddenly decided she wanted to go to college too, even though she had always said higher education wasn't for her. She applied to the same school but didn't get in, which only seemed to fuel her resentment. When I introduced Alex to my family, Jenna's reaction was strange. She was overly friendly with him, almost flirtatious, which made me uncomfortable, but Alex assured me it was nothing, and I wanted to believe him. After all, despite our differences, Jenna was my sister. I never thought she would betray me in the worst possible way. Last year, I started noticing changes in Alex's behavior. He was always on his phone, working late, and being secretive. First, I brushed it off. Alex had recently started a new job at a tech startup, and I thought he was just stressed and adjusting to the new workload. But as weeks turned into months, my suspicions grew. I hate to admit it, but I eventually broke down and snooped through his phone one night while he was asleep. What I found shattered my world. There were hundreds of messages between Alex and Jenna, dating back several months. They were clearly having an affair. The messages were explicit and left no room for doubt. I felt sick to my stomach. Not only was my husband cheating on me, but he was doing it with my own sister. I didn't confront them immediately. A part of me hoped it was all a misunderstanding, that there was some logical explanation, but deep down I knew the truth. I decided to gather more evidence. I installed a hidden camera in our living room and bedroom. I know it's not legal, but I was desperate. Over the next few weeks, I caught them in the act multiple times when I was supposed to be at work. Each time I watched the footage, I felt a piece of my heart die. The two people I should have been able to trust the most in this world had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I thought about the family dinners where Jenna would sit across from me, smiling and asking about my life, all while sleeping with my husband behind my back. I thought about the nights Alex would come home late, claiming he was working, when in reality he had been with my sister. I was devastated and angry. My first instinct was to confront them, to scream and shout and demand answers, but a part of me wanted revenge. I wanted them to feel the same pain and humiliation I was feeling, so I waited until our annual family reunion, which was scheduled a month later. All our relatives would be there, including our parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. The family reunion had always been a big deal in our family. It was a tradition started by our grandparents decades ago, a way to keep the family close despite distance and busy lives. This year, it was being held at my parents' house, the same house where Jenna and I had grown up. On the day of the reunion, I acted normal. I helped my mom set up the food, laughed at my dad's bad jokes, and even managed to make small talk with Jenna and Alex. My heart was pounding the entire time, knowing what was about to happen. When everyone had gathered in the living room after dinner, I asked for their attention. I said I had a special video to share of Alex and me. My Aunt Sandra, always the romantic, gushed about how sweet it was that we had made a couple's video. If only she knew. Instead of a sweet couple's video, I played the compilation of Alex and Jenna's encounters on the big screen TV. The room went silent. People gasped. My mom dropped the plate of cookies she was holding. My dad's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. Alex and Jenna tried to run, but my cousins, reacting on instinct, blocked the exit. I calmly explained everything I had discovered, showing the text messages as further proof. I described how long it had been going on, how they had lied to my face for months. The aftermath was chaotic. My parents were in tears. Some relatives were yelling at Alex and Jenna, while others were trying to comfort me. My Uncle Bob, who had always been protective of me, had to be held back from punching Alex. Alex begged for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake and that he loved me. He claimed Jenna had seduced him, that he had been weak. Jenna, on the other hand, tried to blame me. She said I neglected Alex, that I was cold and unloving, and that's why he turned to her. Her words stung, but I refused to let them see me cry. I filed for divorce the next day. Most of my family supported me, but my parents were torn. They were angry at Jenna and Alex, but also upset that I had exposed everything so publicly. They said I should have handled it privately to avoid embarrassing the family, but I stood my ground. I told them that Alex and Jenna were the ones who should be embarrassed, not me. It's been a month since the incident. Alex moved out, and I haven't spoken to Jenna since. Some family members think I went too far by exposing them at the reunion. They say I could have confronted them privately and spared the family the embarrassment, but I don't regret my actions. I believe they deserve to be exposed for their betrayal. Every day is a struggle. I wake up, and for a split second I forget what happened, then reality comes crashing down, and the pain feels fresh all over again. But I'm trying to stay strong. I'm focusing on my job, spending time with friends who have been supportive, and trying to rebuild my life. I know the road ahead will be tough. The divorce proceedings will be messy, and family gatherings will be awkward for years to come, but I refuse to let Alex and Jenna's actions define me. I refuse to be a victim. So, Reddit, a thank you for exposing my sister's affair with my husband in front of our entire family. Update 1. It's been 3 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your words have been a lifeline during some of my darkest moments. The divorce proceedings are underway, and it's been a roller coaster of emotions. Alex initially tried to contest it, claiming that I violated his privacy by recording him without consent. My lawyer, a tough-as-nails woman named Missa, advised me that while the recordings might not be admissible in court, the text messages were enough evidence for a fault-based divorce. When Alex realized he had no chance of reconciliation or winning in court, he agreed to an uncontested divorce. But that doesn't mean he's made it easy. He's been trying to manipulate me emotionally, sending long emails about how sorry he is and how much he misses me. One day he's begging for forgiveness. The next he's angry and blaming me for ruining his life. It's exhausting. Jenna, on the other hand, has been relentless in her attempts to paint herself as the victim. She's been spreading lies about me to anyone who will listen. According to her, I was the one who drove Alex away with my cold and unloving behavior, and she was just comforting him. She even tried to convince our parents that I had known about the affair all along and only exposed it for attention. Her behavior has brought back memories of our childhood that I had long forgotten, like the time when I was 16 and had my first serious boyfriend. Jenna, who was 19 at the time, went out of her way to flirt with him whenever she was around. I confronted her about it, and she laughed it off, saying I was being paranoid. 2 weeks later, I found out she had kissed him at a party. History really does repeat itself. Speaking of our parents, they're still struggling to cope with everything. Mom is devastated and barely leaves the house anymore. She's always been a social butterfly, involved in various community activities. Now she cancels plans at the last minute and spends most of her time watching old movies in her room. Dad tries to put on a brave face, but I can see how much this has affected him. His hair seems to have gone grayer in the past few months, and the lines on his face have deepened. They've been going to family counseling, trying to understand how things got to this point. Last week, I ran into Alex at a local cafe. It was the first time I had seen him in person since the family reunion. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled like he had slept in them. For a moment, I felt a pang of the old feelings I used to have for him. Then he started talking. He begged me to give him another chance, saying he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He said he missed our life together, our inside jokes, the way I always knew how to calm him down when he was stressed. As he spoke, I could almost see the man I fell in love with, almost. But then I remembered the footage of him with Jenna, the lies, the betrayal. I told him that he made his choice when he decided to sleep with my sister, and now he has to live with the consequences. The hardest part of all this has been the loneliness. I've lost my husband and my sister in one fell swoop. Even though they betrayed me, there are moments when I miss having them in my life. I miss the easy conversations Alex and I used to have over dinner. I miss calling Jenna to gossip about our favorite TV shows. But then I remember what they did, and the anger comes rushing back. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. Her name is Dr. Chun, and she's been incredibly helpful. It's been good to have someone to talk to who isn't involved in the situation. She's been helping me work through my trust issues and teaching me how to set boundaries. We've been exploring my childhood and my relationship with Jenna, trying to understand the root of our issues. One positive thing that's come out of this mess is that I've reconnected with some old friends. My college roommate, Sarah, reached out after hearing what happened. We hadn't spoken in years, but it was like no time had passed. She's been incredibly supportive, inviting me out and making sure I'm not isolating myself. It's reminded me that family isn't just about blood relations. As for the relatives who thought I went too far with the public exposure, most of them have come around. My Aunt Linda, who initially criticized me, called to apologize. She said she reacted out of shock but now understands why I did what I did. She shared that her own husband had cheated on her years ago, and she wished she had had the courage to stand up for herself the way I did. I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are better than others. I'm focusing on my career and have thrown myself into a big project at work. We're developing new software that could revolutionize the way small businesses handle their accounting. It's challenging and exciting, and it helps keep my mind off everything else. I still stand by my decision to expose Alex and Jenna. Yes, it was dramatic and public, but I believe they needed to face the consequences of their actions. The truth would have come out eventually, and at least this way I was able to control the narrative. I refuse to be ashamed or to let them make me feel like I'm the one who did something wrong. As I navigate this new chapter of my life, I'm trying to focus on the future. I'm rediscovering who I am as an individual, not as Alex's wife or Jenna's sister. It's scary, but also liberating. I'm learning to trust myself again, to believe in my own strength and resilience. Whatever comes next, I know I can handle it. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and life has taken some unexpected turns. The divorce is finally finalized, and I'm officially a single woman again. It's a bittersweet feeling. Relief mixed with sadness for what could have been. I keep thinking about the life Alex and I had planned together, the children we talked about having, the house we wanted to buy. It's strange to think that none of that will happen now, at least not with him. Alex moved out of state for a new job. I heard through mutual friends that he's been struggling to adjust to his new life. Apparently, he's been drinking a lot and has already been warned about his performance at work. Part of me feels a twisted sense of satisfaction knowing he's unhappy, but mostly I just feel indifferent. He's no longer a part of my life and I'm okay with that. Jenna, on the other hand, has been causing more drama. She showed up at my workplace last month, making a scene in the lobby. She was crying and screaming about how I had ruined her life, how I had turned the family against her. My coworkers were shocked. I hadn't told many of them about what had happened. Security had to escort her out, and my boss called me into his office afterward. I ended up having to explain the whole sordid story. Thankfully, he was understanding, but it was humiliating to have my personal life on display like that. I've since filed a restraining order against Jenna. It breaks my heart that it's come to this, but I need to protect myself. The day I went to the courthouse to file the paperwork, I ran into our childhood neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. She asked how Jenna and I were doing, saying she always thought we were such close sisters. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth, so I just mumbled something about us both being busy with work. It made me think about all the times Jenna and I had played in Mrs. Peterson's yard as kids. How she would bring us cookies and lemonade on hot summer days. How did we go from that to this? Our parents are still caught in the middle of all this. Mom's health has taken a turn for the worse. The stress of everything has exacerbated her heart condition. She was hospitalized last week, and it was touch and go for a while. I spent nights sitting by her hospital bed, holding her hand and remembering all the times she had done the same for me when I was sick as a child. Thankfully, she's stable now, but the doctors have warned her to avoid stress. Dad is trying his best to keep the family together, but it's a losing battle. He's been calling me regularly, trying to convince me to reconcile with Jenna for Mom's sake. I've told him repeatedly that while I'm willing to be civil for family gatherings, I will never trust Jenna again. It's hard to hear the disappointment in his voice, but I have to stand my ground. On a more positive note, I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, just casual coffee dates. It's been nice to feel attractive and wanted again. Last week, I went out with a guy named Tom. We met at a local bookstore. He reached for the same book I was about to grab. We ended up talking for hours about our favorite authors. It was nice to have a conversation that didn't revolve around my past drama. Work has been a great distraction. I got a promotion last month, which has kept me busier than ever. I'm now leading a team on that software project I mentioned in my last update. It's challenging, but I'm enjoying the responsibility. I'm grateful for the distraction and the sense of accomplishment it brings. I've also started volunteering at a local women's shelter. It started as a way to get out of the house and stop wallowing in my own problems, but it's become so much more than that. Helping other women who have been through difficult situations has been incredibly rewarding and has given me a new perspective on my own problems. Last week, I helped a woman about my age move into her own apartment after leaving an abusive relationship. Seeing her smile as she looked around her new place, knowing she was safe, was one of the best feelings I've had in a long time. As for the family reunion incident, it's become something of a cautionary tale in our extended family. I overheard my cousin telling her teenage daughter to be careful who you trust, or you might end up like Alex and Jenna. It's not the legacy I would have chosen, but if it prevents someone else from going through what I did, then maybe some good came out of this mess after all. Update 3. It's been a year since my original post, and it feels like a lifetime ago. So much has changed, and yet some things remain frustratingly the same. The biggest news is that I'm moving. I got a fantastic job offer in another state, and after much consideration, I decided to take it. It's a chance for a fresh start, away from all the painful memories and family drama. The company I'll be working for is developing cutting-edge AI technology, and they want me to lead their software development team. It's an incredible opportunity, both professionally and personally. Packing up my life here has been an emotional process. Every object seems to hold a memory, good or bad. I found an old photo album from my wedding tucked away in a closet. Seeing those happy faces, completely unaware of what the future held, brought tears to my eyes. I ended up donating most of the wedding gifts and mementos. It felt cathartic, like I was finally letting go of that chapter of my life. Speaking of letting go, there's been some major family drama recently. Jenna is pregnant. Yes, you read that right, and yes, it's Alex's. They're not together. Apparently, it happened during one of their weak moments after the divorce. They told the family last month, and it's thrown everyone into chaos again. I found out through a tearful phone call from my mom. She was barely coherent, alternating between excitement about becoming a grandmother and despair over the circumstances. Dad got on the phone and tried to smooth things over, saying that maybe this baby could bring the family back together. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from screaming. Mom had another health scare when she heard the news. The shock and stress were too much for her heart. She's stable now, but the doctors have warned that she needs to avoid stress. It's ironic. The very thing that's causing her stress is the thing she's most excited about. As for me, I'm still processing this new development. Part of me is angry that they're bringing a child into this mess. Another part feels sorry for the baby, who didn't ask to be born into such a complicated situation. Mostly, I just feel tired of it all. I've decided that for my own mental health, I need to distance myself from this situation. I've told my parents that while I love them, I won't be involved in anything to do with Jenna or Alex's child. It might seem harsh, but I need to prioritize my own healing. I can't be the aunt this child deserves, and it's better to step away now than to half-heartedly try and inevitably disappoint everyone. On a brighter note, I've been seeing someone for a few months now. His name is Mark, and we met at a tech conference. He's kind, funny, and most importantly, honest. He knows about my past and has been incredibly understanding and patient. It's still early days, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. Mark has been a huge support as I prepare for my move. He's helped me pack, listened to me vent about family drama, and even offered to drive with me to my new city to help me get settled. His kindness and genuine care for me have been a balm to my battered heart. As I pack up my life here and prepare for my move, I can't help but reflect on everything that's happened. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I had lost my husband, my sister, and my sense of trust in one fell swoop. There were days when I could barely get out of bed, when the pain and betrayal felt like a physical weight crushing me. But here I am, a year later, about to start a new job in a new city. I'm in a healthy relationship with a man who respects me. I've rediscovered my passion for my work and found new purpose in volunteering. It hasn't been an easy journey, and I know there will still be tough days ahead, but I'm proud of how far I've come. To everyone who's followed my story and offered support, thank you. Your kind words and advice have meant more than you know. Here's to new beginnings and leaving the past where it belongs, in the past. As I close this chapter of my life, I'm filled with a mix of emotions. Hope, anxiety, excitement, and a tinge of sadness, but mostly I feel strong. Whatever challenges lie ahead, I know I can face them. After all, I've already survived the worst betrayal imaginable. Everything else is just a bump in the road. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Childhood friend's boyfriend tried to secretly sex me to test our friendship. The aftermath got messy when her abusive ex got involved. I have a childhood friend, Emily. I've known her since we were 5. We originally met because our respective fathers, both German and living in the UK having married British women, became friends, and we were basically raised as siblings. Nothing remotely romantic has ever happened between us. It's accurate to say I treat her like I do my other sisters. People struggle at times to believe nothing has happened between us. But is it so insane for someone with 3 sisters to treat a childhood friend as a 4th? We stopped being friends briefly when she got married way too young to her boss. He ended up being incredibly abusive, controlling her life at every level, and over the 3 years they were together, he basically isolated her from all friends and family. We reconciled when she divorced him. Around this time, I attended university and met my now wife. Early on, we were assigned to the same floor in halls. We've been together for 17 years now, and she's become really close to Emily over the years. Also at university, I met a guy, George, on my course. We were part of the same friendship group, but didn't stay in touch until we coincidentally ended up working together a good 10 years after graduation. I ended up introducing him to Emily, and they started a relationship a year or so later. They moved in together. Emily was happy. He was happy on the face of things. He seemingly had been fine with me and Emily's friendship and never said anything. Over the past few weeks, I started getting texts from her, sometimes late at night, that were just off. I was suspicious when she used a common British shortening of my full name rather than the traditional German version our respective fathers and she would always use, and when some overtly flirty, almost outright sexting occurred, I immediately shut it down, 100% sure it wasn't her. I basically called him out and asked if this was, in fact, George using her phone and bluntly asked why he was trying to sex me as his girlfriend. He never responded, but after explaining the situation to my wife, she went over to Emily's with my phone to see what was going on. I wasn't there for this, but she showed Emily our entire text history and what he had done. George came home, and they confronted him. He first outright denied it and had the balls to accuse Emily of sexting me and trying to hide said cheating from my wife by saying he did it. Emily just left with my wife to come stay with us after this because there wasn't any reasoning with him. The morning after, he called and begged her to come home. He was crying and threw himself at her feet, claiming he did it out of jealousy. He highlighted that she was in the habit of deleting our conversations, which drove him mad, an apparent choice she makes for all her texts with everyone, not just me, and he was always jealous of our relationship. He found it hard to see me with her, and after he saw her saying stuff like how she loved me, again siblings, not being able to read our texts drove him to basically go fishing to test our relationship. The sexting was an attempt to bluntly see if it was something we, or more specifically I, would engage in. At this point, Emily asked for mine and my wife's opinion on this whole thing. I called this being a mistake, something he was driven to by jealousy. He violated her privacy by going through her phone, risked our friendship by masquerading as her, risked my marriage by trying to bait me into sexting a friend, risked Emily and my wife's friendship by making it look like Emily was sexting me. The entire thing was a cluster. I didn't outright say she should leave him, but I highlighted how dishonest this whole thing was. She eventually went back home, and I didn't hear anything for a few days. But Emily eventually revealed to my wife that she had functionally forgiven him. My wife worked out from the conversation what had happened. He had basically flipped the script on me by playing into fears from her marriage. He described me as another controlling male trying to dictate who she had a relationship with. He encouraged her to make her own decision. Not bad advice in theory, but she had to ignore me because I didn't have her best interest at heart. I was controlling her like her ex. My wife quietly pointed out he was, in fact, being like her ex, not me. He was driving a wedge between her and family. At this point, Emily just gave up, said she couldn't win, couldn't decide between the man she loves and her brother. So let's pretend it never happened. We haven't really spoken since. Apparently, part of forgetting this ever happened is also giving in to his worries about our friendship. Every time I try and bring up what he did, I've either been ignored or told to stay out of it. Honestly, this pisses me off that he's gotten exactly what he wanted. He stopped us talking. I know I can't force her to break up with him, but it's seemingly a catch-22. I can't push her to make a decision about what he did whilst he's got her convinced I'm controlling her. I rarely see George at work, and he's rightly kept away from me. I was tempted to bring my sisters into this cluster, tell them what happened, they love her like a sister too, and see if they can talk some sense into Emily, but that's somewhat manipulative too. So any advice? Let sleeping dogs lie? Try and get her to deal with what he did rather than sweeping it under the rug. Update 1. I thought I'd update this post seeing as there was part of a resolution and the advice was good. So I followed the general advice of just leaving the entire situation alone. I agree any interference from me or my family would be manipulative and controlling, albeit well-meaning. So I haven't really spoken to Emily since slightly before Christmas, but her mother contacted me a little after New Year to ask if I knew what was going on with her. Emily's cousin back in Germany had contacted her mother, saying she had turned up on her doorstep, having flown in from the UK on the 4th after apparently breaking up with George. According to her mother, Emily had come back to our hometown for the holidays. She brought George, and it's at some point they ran into her ex-husband at the pub. For context, we grew up in a tiny village in the arse end of nowhere. There's literally nothing to our village but a pub, a post office, and a small supermarket. Her ex still lives where we grew up. So this is all information relayed to me via Emily's mother, but apparently, at some point, George approached Emily's ex-husband and asked for some advice. George is familiar with the story of their relationship and knows how controlling he was and why they divorced. Somewhat to her ex-husband's credit, he apparently refused to answer any questions and quietly approached Emily's mother to relay what he had asked. Now this is according to him, and George denies it, but he said George asked him how to handle me in terms of my friendship with Emily. I have no idea what Emily's ex-husband's motivation was here, but they've been divorced for a decade now, and he hasn't contacted her in this time. So I'm inclined to believe it wasn't further attempts at interfering with her life. Maybe it was actually manipulation. Maybe in the decades since they've divorced he's become a better man. Who knows? We're all inclined to believe that is what was asked despite George denying it, because how else would her ex-husband know he had an issue with me recently? He isn't in contact with anyone who would know about the recent issues. Also, to be honest, the ex never had an issue with me. He saw me as a child despite being the same age as his then-wife and constantly called me kiddo and asked how school was. It would be a very specific shot in the dark on his part to assume George had an issue with me without George saying so himself. So her mother told Emily what George had tried to do and pointed out that her boyfriend is now trying to emulate her ex-husband's behavior and encouraged her to confront him over this and also what happened over the last month rather than ignoring it. Nobody was privy to the discussion they had, but he left some time after it to return to their shared home, and she stayed with her mother, saying they had broken up. She stayed with her mother until the day after, where she, without any warning, left for Germany. The cousin she's staying with assures us she's relatively fine. She's just overwhelmed and embarrassed she let this happen again. She couldn't handle being where she might run into either ex, so staying with her mother was off the table, and she just ran somewhere far but safe. I still haven't spoken to Emily. I've sent her a message with some condolences and reassurance she will always have a home here in the UK. I've decided to continue to give her space whilst making it clear I am there for her. She hasn't responded, but I assume this is just out of awkwardness over what happened and how technically George was once my friend. He hasn't spoken to me either, and I haven't seen him at work at all. So yeah, not a happy ending per se. It shouldn't have taken her abusive ex getting involved for a resolution, but as people predicted, George was being abusive, and he would repeat that behavior. I suppose it was relatively painless that he showed his true colors so emphatically without much further abuse. This could have dragged on. Thanks for the advice. Me staying out of it didn't make this any easier for her, but it probably avoided making it worse. Update 2. I jumped the gun a little with the previous update, and looking back, I hadn't actually spoken to Emily, and it was all secondhand information. TLDR of everything so far is, my childhood friend Emily's then-boyfriend, George, sexted me as her to try and see if anything was going on between us. After being confronted, he approached her abusive ex-husband, and she left him, realizing twice now she's fallen for abusive men. Given this whole thing has now been entirely sorted in the 3 months since it happened, I thought I'd actually give an actual full resolution. So Emily came back to the UK just before the country was locked down and moved in with us, reluctantly. We grabbed some beers and played Divinity 2 whilst we hashed out exactly what went down from her perspective. I apologized for going behind her back and speaking to her mother about it. All situations like this are never helped by information being relayed through other people, and I asked if she wanted to go through it all start to finish. Basically, she buried her head in the sand the day she found out he had been trying to sex me as her. It was just too much. She couldn't win. She either lost the man she loved and the lifestyle she had or lost her brother. I assured her she'd never lose me, but she revealed she low-key hated the fact she let herself be taken advantage of like this twice and couldn't face me, having not listened to my advice. She also mentioned that breaking up with him would inevitably land her on my doorstep for support, and that made her feel bad. Also, hence escaping to Germany and not talking to me about this. This went deeper, and she opened up about her insecurities, how she regretted never going to university instead marrying her abusive ex-husband, and how she feels like an accessory to other people's happiness. She saw me and my wife as a power couple, as she put it, and just felt so small by comparison. She did love George, but leaving him would leave her with functionally nothing again, and she couldn't handle that. We talked about this a lot. I revealed I was aware my support of her could be a problem. I was feeling like I had made their relationship awkward by being so involved in her life. It might have been hard for George feeling like her boyfriend whilst I was there picking up her tabs, doing the DIY, and basically acting like a father, coddling his child. I asked if my, with retrospection, financial support of her tied into this feeling of inadequacy, like I was dragging her along for my ride, and she said it was a problem. She felt trapped when the relationship ended because she had no independence or true control. Whilst I would never use my position to control her, she would still be living by someone else's good graces. She felt she needed to stand on her own 2 feet, be her own woman, rather than relying on a man, no matter how much she loved and trusted him. That way, her decisions would be her own rather than under some level of duress. In the same way a child wants independence from her parents, she feels she finally needs independence from me. So we came up with a game plan. Now the lockdown has obviously made this harder. She is still living with me and my wife currently, but the plan is she's going to go back into education. She was capable of attending university, had the qualifications, but decided not to due to marriage. My financial security was really born of an inheritance I had after my father died. Life insurance. I used to not have to worry about rent during my extended time in education and early career. I bought a small flat with it. I still own it. I've decided to pay it forward and put her in a similar situation by letting her use my flat, which is currently unoccupied because it's only been rented to students due to its proximity to 2 universities. Yes, this is me financially supporting her, but in a strictly limited way. No more covering errant bills, paying for holidays, or footing the bill when we socialize. She will not pay rent, but she will cover all bills on the flat, and she moves out the moment she's in work. She didn't love the idea of me owning her home, but I called it my last act as that guy in her life. The pseudo-brother/father/sugar daddy best friend. After this, we'll just be independent siblings/bestest friends. She will be moving soon. We'll need her room after all, since my wife is now 5 months pregnant. Turns out she's been pregnant since late December. And all this started as, for George, he swears up and down he never asked the ex-husband to handle me. He claims he asked how to be fine with me. It wasn't seeking advice how to deal with me. It was seeking advice how to be fine with me. The way her ex-husband was could be true. Who knows? It's irrelevant ultimately, though. We recently found out George moved a girlfriend into the house he and Emily used to share. And here's the kicker. It's a longtime friend. Emily is fairly certain he never cheated on her. But she out loud laughed when she found out he's romantically living together with a longtime friend 3 months after the breakup. The dude's insecurity was likely born of his own feelings for a friend. He was getting close with a girl he was friends with, so he projected that onto me and Emily. Edit. Just to clarify, because this paints a picture I don't intend. I don't pay all of Emily's bills nor for her stuff and holidays. She doesn't want independence from me specifically. She wants independence full stop. She went from her parents to her now ex-husband's, and then spent about a decade living paycheck to paycheck before meeting George and living largely off his money. She has no real qualifications, and her current line of work has limited prospects. The things I do for her come in 2 categories, and the lack of clarity between the one-offs and the consistent things made it look like I pay for her entire world. Firstly, there's the trivial stuff I do consistently that I'm stopping as a massive overreaction to George. Logically, it's fine that a brother and his wife do these things for his sister, but they weirdly make her uncomfortable, and it obviously made her ex uncomfortable. Stuff like I've done the odd bit of DIY, specifically fixing a vacuum, which isn't given, and I work in R&D for a vacuum brand, and I pay for her drinks and stuff if we socialize. I'm stopping all that trivial level of support, largely at her request, to ease her discomfort at being subsidized by me. It's a pride thing. This might also help with any jealous boyfriends wrongly assuming because I pay for her cinema ticket along with my wife we're secretly Mormon. The second category were the big one-off things like paying that bill or buying plane tickets, things I did in a crisis and are out of extreme generosity. Once she wants to be able to be safe during like COVID without needing to live with me, she wants to be able to break up with a guy and be okay alone rather than crashing here. She wants to be able to up a meter reading on her electricity and weather the silly bill that comes without me paying it. That happened once. I'm not going to stop doing these things entirely. An emergency is an emergency. We won't let her come to any harm, but instead we're going to try and make it that she doesn't need me to do these things via an education and hopefully a better job. So yeah, I don't pay for her entire life. I just muddled some big things I've done in an emergency and with some trivial brotherly support. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Got a message from my half-brothers wanting to know me. And now I'm torn whether to reveal our stepfather's monstrous past or stay silent. I'm a 21-year-old male. I ended up in foster care at 9 years old because of the abuse I suffered at the hands of my stepfather, a man my mom kept choosing over me. Despite all the support and interventions that were supposed to protect me, my mom refused to kick him out, even after she had a restraining order against him. She still let him back into our lives. Meanwhile, she went on to have 2 more children with this man. My half-brothers, who are now 19, Richie, and 16, James. It got to the point where it was obvious that no matter what, she would keep letting him back into our lives and allowing me to be a scapegoat for anything that was wrong in life, and I ended up being removed. After I was removed from the home, My mom was allowed to keep and raise my brothers as if nothing had happened. From what I know, my stepfather never laid a hand on them. My mom and this man are still together. I know because I've checked her Facebook more times than I'd like to admit. Growing up, it was devastating to realize that my mom would rather give me up than fight for me. She could have kept me if she just left him, but she didn't. This abandonment left me with deep scars and a lot of issues to deal with as I grew up. It didn't help that she cut off all contact with me almost as soon as I was placed in foster care. She wouldn't even show up for court-ordered visits. Foster care was also really rough for me. I bounced around 3 different families, and it wasn't until the last one that I got any therapy to help me make sense of what had happened. A few days ago, out of nowhere, I got a Facebook message from Richie and James. They said they've been thinking about me a lot and want to get to know me. They even mentioned that our mom talks about me sometimes and wonders how I'm doing. They said they'd like to start some kind of relationship if I'm open to it, and Richie said he would be willing to drive him and James to come and visit me wherever I am in the country. They both seemed nice in this message, and I don't have an issue with either of them. At first, I was going to ignore the message because I don't want anything to do with my biological family, but then a darker thought crossed my mind. This could be my one and only chance to expose my stepfather for the monster he truly is. I could finally tell my half-brothers everything he did to me, everything he put me through, and let the truth come crashing down on them. I know that if I do this, it'll probably destroy any chance of having a relationship with them, but honestly, I'm not sure I want one anyway. I told my friend that I was thinking about doing this, and he said it's a really bad idea that won't accomplish anything he wanted. He said it will most likely just cause them to think I'm bitter and mean and won't make them have any issues with their dad. But while I know it would be a difficult thing to process, I would want to know if my dad was like that. I would want to know the truth about how my dad treated other children. I don't know how much they know about why I was removed into care. Update 1. So, after thinking a lot about what everyone said and after having a session with my therapist, I realized that my initial plan to tell my brothers everything about my stepfather wasn't really about helping them. It was more about me still holding on to the anger and hurt from my past, and that's not fair to them. A lot of you pointed out that they probably don't know the full story and are innocent in all this, and honestly, that hit hard. I decided to reach out to my brother Richie and told him I'd like to meet up. I didn't mention anything about our mom or the stepfather situation. I figured if we were going to start a relationship, it's better to take things slow and not dump all that heavy stuff on them right away. We ended up meeting at a cafe. I was super nervous, but when I saw them, it actually felt nice. They were both really nice, and we just talked about normal stuff like what we've been up to, our favorite football teams, that sort of thing. It was weirdly easy to chat with them. At one point, James asked why I was placed in foster care. That caught me off guard, but I decided to keep it vague and just said that things were complicated at home back then and that going into care was what was best for me at the time. James started pushing a bit for more details, but Richie told him to knock it off, which honestly was a relief. By the end of it, I was glad I went. They asked if we could stay in touch and I said yes. I'm still figuring out how much to share about what happened, but for now, I'm just trying to focus on building a relationship with them. I realize that while the past is important, it doesn't have to dictate how things go with them now. So yeah, thanks again to everyone who helped me see things clearer. I'm feeling a lot more hopeful about this, and I'm really glad I didn't just go with my gut reaction to tell them everything right off the bat. We'll see where things go from here, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Some people were saying I was allowing the abuser to get away with it by not telling my brothers. I had DMs calling me an abuse apologist, people calling me a liar for not answering the question James asked when we first met. I never said I wasn't ever going to talk to them about my past. Literally, in my last post, I said I was still working on sharing my past in a healthy way with help from my therapist, and yet I had people acting like they knew best and that I should just tell them both right away. So many people arguing about it one way or the other. It does seem like everything I do, there will be issues. I will upset someone. I know that, and I am trying to navigate this in my own way, so please be respectful of that, even if you would have done it a different way. I am in no way letting SD get away with the abuse. I tried everything I could as a child/teen to get him prosecuted. I have accepted that that will never happen. Just know I am a real person who reads the comments. Not everything I do is perfect, but please just be kind. I don't say this to stop people from giving me advice. I love advice. Just be positive and kind. I don't need more negativity. Anyway, in the week since my last post, I have met up with my brothers 3 more times. Once with both, and 2 times it has been just me and Richie. There seems to have been an instant bond between us. Something that I didn't even know I wanted. I am loving hanging out with them, which is amazing because I didn't even think I ever wanted to see any of my family again. Never mind start to develop a good relationship with some of them. When I last met up with Richie alone, we went to go see a movie and then get something to eat. We spoke about our plans and what he does now, and we got talking about me and foster care. I asked him what he had been told about me growing up. He said they haven't been told much, but that mom sometimes talks about me. I asked him what he remembered of me and why I was taken into care. He said he has some fuzzy memories and clear memories, but he said he didn't know for certain what happened. He said he remembered a lot of fighting and arguing between me and SD. He said he had one very clear memory of me but said he didn't know whether it was appropriate for him to share it or not. He asked me what I remembered, and I said it was difficult for me to talk about with people. He said he understood if I didn't want to get into it. I asked him what his clear memory was. He remembered me being about 8 years old. My SD stripping me naked and putting me in a dog's collar and making me eat dog food. He said he remembered his dad hitting me with his belt as I was eating out the dog bowl and crying. This actually happened many times for me growing up, but he said he only remembered it once. I started crying and he apologized for bringing it up and I said don't. I was glad he at least remembered some things of my abuse. He said he guessed that the abuse by SD was the reason I was taken away. I said yeah. I asked if SD ever abused either of them and he said he had never, but he said he wasn't close to either my mom or his dad. He said they weren't ever amazingly loving people but never abused them. He said he was sorry again. We spoke some more about our childhood. I felt safer talking about the abuse since he already remembered some of it. We spoke a bit more about it. I tried answering questions he had, and he answered some of mine. He asked if the trauma still impacts me now, and I said yeah. I was open with him that I've attempted to end my own life multiple times because of it. He apologized for not being there for me, for not sticking up for me. I said nothing that happened was his fault or my fault and that we can't change the past. After we finished, we both went to our own homes. He messaged me saying he's glad I grew up and that I managed to keep living. He meant it sweetly, I think, even though it came off a little weird. I feel really amazing that I have a brother who seems to care about me. I couldn't even have imagined he would have liked me a few weeks ago. Update 2. I'm still working on building a relationship with my brothers, but it's been more complicated than I anticipated. While things started off surprisingly well, it's clear now that we're all navigating different versions of our shared past. After Richie opened up about his memory of the abuse, we've had more conversations about what I went through. I didn't want to keep tiptoeing around the subject, so I decided to share a little more, but I've been careful not to overwhelm them. James, though, has been acting a bit distant since then. I can't help but wonder if maybe he's struggling to process everything. I wouldn't blame him. It's a lot to take in, especially for someone who had no idea what was really going on back then. And I didn't even really tell him what happened, just that I was abused by his dad when I was young, and that's what caused me to go into foster care. And I only told him that much after he asked me again. Richie has been supportive, but I think even he's starting to feel the weight of it all. We had a pretty intense conversation a few days ago where he admitted that he's feeling conflicted. On one hand, he loves his dad, but on the other, he now knows what a monster he was to me. It's like he's torn between 2 realities. The dad he grew up with, who was far from perfect but never abusive to him, and the man who made my life hell. He hasn't said it directly, but I think part of him feels guilty for not experiencing the same horrors I did. I think he feels like I got it so he and James didn't. I keep reminding him it's not his fault, but I can tell it's weighing on him. Richie has been hanging out with me like 3 times a week though, and we have a good time together when we do hang out. As for James, he's been pulling away. I tried reaching out to see if he wanted to meet up, but he keeps making excuses. I get it. I probably dropped a lot on him. I've decided to give him some space and not push too hard. I've learned that everyone processes trauma and difficult truths in their own way, and maybe he needs time to wrap his head around everything. Despite all of this, I've started to feel a bit lighter. Sharing my story, even if it's just pieces of it, has been hard, but it's also been freeing. I spent so many years carrying this alone, and while I'm still cautious about how much I share, I'm beginning to realize that I deserve to be heard, too. I'm continuing therapy, and my therapist has been amazing at helping me figure out how to balance opening up with protecting myself. One thing I didn't expect was for my mom to reach out. She sent me a message on Facebook a few days ago saying she wanted to talk about the past and that she misses me. It was the first time in years I've heard from her directly, and honestly, I'm torn about what to do. Part of me is still angry, furious even, that she let all of this happen, but another part of me is curious. I don't know if she's finally seeing things clearly or if she just wants to smooth things over without actually addressing what happened. I haven't responded yet, and I'm not sure if I will. It's hard to know if she's changed or if it's just too little too late. For now, I'm focused on my relationship with Richie and James. I'm hopeful that with time, James will come around, and we can all find some peace with the past. But I'm also learning that not everything can be fixed, and that's okay. Some things you just have to learn to live with. Update 3. So, I felt really conflicted after my mom asked to meet up. I really hadn't had much contact with her since I was removed. After really considering it and after reading the messages I got from you guys, I decided it was probably best to not respond to my mom. I decided not to meet up with her and just ignored her completely, as I think even messaging her would make my mental health spiral. It wasn't long after that James asked if I could meet up with him, which I was happy about because I felt like he had been avoiding me since I revealed everything about what his dad and our mom did to me. Richie couldn't come, even though I invited him, so it was just me and James. We went to the cinema, and we were having a good time when he started talking about our mom and how much she wanted to meet me. I told him I just wasn't ready now and wasn't sure if I'd ever be ready to meet her again. Again, he started saying how it's selfish of me to not at least talk to her, and I tried to reiterate that I wasn't ready to talk to her and how what she did to me has caused so much pain and damage to me. He started to say something like, "She's not the same person anymore," or something, but I cut him off. I tried to shut it down there and said I don't want to discuss it further, and if he was going to keep bringing it up, I would just drop him back off at the train station. He called me an a-hole and told me to just drop him off, so I did that, and not long after that he blocked me on everything, which I admit I was really upset about. Richie called me and told me that James was upset and had been speaking about me being selfish in the house, and Richie said that it was probably best for me and Richie to go low contact for a while, even though he said he supports me. He said he has to try and navigate it through his home life until he is able to move out and be independent. I understand that, even though it made me really sad. That happened about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything from any of them since then, even though I've been sending memes to Richie on Instagram every other day or so. We had been sending each other memes constantly before, and he hasn't even opened the messages now. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Wife cheated on me with my own uncle during a family crisis, but I took my revenge by doing this. My partner and I have been together for 5 years, though we had recently gotten married. We actually met on a blind date that one of our mutual friends set us up on. I was new in town and I didn't know anyone, so I jumped at the opportunity to meet someone. At the very least, I figured if there wasn't a romantic connection, I would possibly make a new friend. Though I was lucky, when there was a strong romantic connection between my wife and I. She joked with me on the date that our mutual friend had always been trying to play matchmaker with her, but it never worked before. She spent the night, and from there it was like she never left. We were completely inseparable from each other. I really thought that I found my best friend when I met her. That's what makes all of this so much harder on me. I was estranged from my family at a young age, and I had to work through a lot of complicated feelings toward them. My father was abusive toward me and my siblings, and I decided I didn't want anything to do with it. I was the only one to leave the family, and there was a lot of resentment toward me because of it. Even though I hated my father for what he did, there was still a part of me that loved him. It was very complex and hard to discuss with people. I shared everything with my wife, and she supported me through a lot of things early on in our relationship. About 6 months ago, I found out that my father had died. He was in a bad car accident, and it took the entire family by surprise. I was saddened by the news, but I also felt extremely guilty for having cut him off. My wife and I went back to my hometown to attend the funeral. While we were there, I was ignoring her a bit. Not on purpose, but because I was very sidetracked with my familial problems. My siblings and my mother were very cold toward me after I abandoned them. We had a lot of things to work through, and I intended on trying while I was there. That left my wife alone in town for quite a while since we were there for about a week and a half. I never would have suspected she was cheating on me at the time, but looking back, there were a few things that I think might have been because of an affair. One night while we were in town, she didn't come to bed. I looked around the house for her, but I didn't see her anywhere. I called her to ask her where she was, and she told me that she needed to get out of the house and she was on a walk. I did wait up for an hour, but I was exhausted, and I fell asleep before she got home. I might have been a little too involved in the other things going on in my life to question her about it at the time, but now I think that's where this all began. After we went back home, things still weren't the same for me. I was mourning the loss of my father, and I was really grieving the fact that I hadn't spoken to him in years. There were a lot of things I never said to him that I wanted to, and I felt like that chance was taken from me. However, since he was no longer around, I thought it might be good to try and rekindle a relationship with my family. My wife thought that was a good idea, and she encouraged me to spend more time with them. Throughout all of that time, she was far away from me. It seemed like helping me work through some of these issues was the last thing she wanted to do. It was surprising because she had been so supportive of everything that I told her when we started seeing each other. It felt like I was living with a different person at times. She spent more time away from the house, too. She would go out with her friends, and it felt like she was avoiding me. One night, I asked her about what was going on, and she just told me that she felt uncomfortable dealing with death, so she had distanced herself inadvertently because of that. I felt slighted by that because she was supposed to be there for me, but I didn't want to push her away anymore. I started dealing with my things privately after that. Even after I stopped going to her with the issues, she was still distant and absent from my life. Clearly, what she had told me was a lie because her behavior didn't change when mine did. I started to get suspicious that something was going on. It was the last thing that I needed to be dealing with at the time. I thought I could ignore it, at least I thought I could do that. I was sitting on the couch next to her one night watching a TV show, and I saw a number come up on her phone. I didn't recognize the number itself, but I recognized the area code. It was from my hometown. The only people she knew from there were my family, so I assumed one of them had called her. She rejected the call and I asked her who it was. She told me that it was a friend from work. I asked her about where they were from, and she told me that they lived in the city. It wasn't impossible for them to have a phone number with the area code for my town, but I just didn't believe her. She left a few minutes later, taking her phone with her to no doubt reach out to whoever that was. She had been gone for about 10 minutes when I got up to go and look for her. We were in the middle of watching a TV show together, so I was just sitting there with it paused waiting. When I found her, she was in our bedroom with her shirt off. I asked her about what she was doing, and she got kind of red in the face as if I had never seen her naked before. She told me that she splashed some water on her shirt when she was washing her hands and was just changing. I didn't believe what she said. My gut was telling me that there was something else going on. So later that night, I grabbed her phone while she was asleep and looked through it. Unsurprisingly, when I looked through her pictures, I saw several that she'd clearly just taken earlier that night when she was topless. I searched through her contacts for the number that had called her earlier, and I saw the messages between them. The number wasn't saved, so I didn't know who it was right away. They had been exchanging pictures and sexting with each other for weeks. It all started when we were in town for my father's funeral. I felt sick to my stomach seeing that, but it got worse when I finally realized who it was. Most of the pictures were faceless, but in one of them I saw a tattoo that I recognized. She had been texting with my uncle while I was home for my father's funeral, dealing with some of the heaviest things I had ever had to do. My wife was cheating on me with my uncle. He was my dad's brother, so it was even more disgusting that he was focused on sleeping with my wife during his funeral. I thought both of them were absolutely disgusting for their behaviors. I sent myself as many images and screenshots as I could. I would need them for our divorce hearings. I needed to think of something to do to get back at both of them for their actions. They deserve to be humiliated and have their lives turned upside down for what they did. My uncle was married and he had 5 children. He threw all of that away to sleep with my wife. Now that I was talking to my family again, I knew that there was a birthday party coming up for my grandma. Everyone was going to be there. So I told my wife that I wanted to go, and she happily agreed to come along. I checked her phone a couple of nights after I told her, and she had set up a date to sleep with my uncle again. I was happy to see that. Originally, I had just planned on telling everybody about what happened, but if we could walk in on them in the act, that would be even better. The day of the party came along, and everything went well during the event. At the end of the night, we planned on renting one of my grandma's favorite movies and watching it together on a projector in the backyard. I know that my wife and uncle planned to sneak away at that time. When they were gone, I tapped on my aunt's shoulder and asked her if I could talk to her. We walked away from the movie and made our way inside to have a quiet conversation. I pretended like it was about gathering photos of my father to put together in a book for my uncle because I knew how close they were. She thought it was sweet. We walked into the basement together to look for the boxes of photographs that my grandma kept. As soon as we opened the door, we saw my wife topless, straddling my uncle. I played it off like I had no idea what was happening and I had just stumbled in there, just like my aunt had. There was a huge screaming match that ensued between my aunt and uncle. Then my wife tried to tell me that she had made a mistake and begged me to forgive her. I told her that we were done. Everybody else at the party heard what was happening and they came down to see if everything was all right. They had to explain to everyone that they had been sleeping together before we caught them. Everyone was disgusted by their actions, especially my uncle's children. They were both kicked out of the house that night. Hopefully, they at least thought about how foolish they were. My aunt ended up divorcing my uncle and is now selling the house she was awarded in the divorce. She doesn't have to split any of the profit from that with my uncle. I ended things with my wife, and she got nothing from me. I had been burned by my family in the past, so I was smart enough to get a prenup. Every now and then she'll text me when she's drunk and try to get back together with me. There isn't a chance in hell that I would ever do that. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My sister started dating my ex-boyfriend behind my back, and then asked me to be her maid of honor. I refused and uncovered a shocking family secret that changed everything. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am. I'm Angela, 28, and I've been dealing with a complicated family situation that's been eating away at me for the past year. It all started when my sister, Ariana, 25, began dating my ex-boyfriend, Philip, 30, behind my back. To give you some context, Ariana and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. We were always close, despite our 3-year age gap. As kids, we shared a room and would stay up late whispering about our dreams and fears. Ariana was my confidant, the person I trusted most in the world. Our parents, both high school teachers, instilled in us the importance of family and loyalty. We were taught that sisters should always have each other's backs. I met Philip during my sophomore year of college. I was studying marketing at Ohio State, and he was a senior majoring in finance. We met at a campus coffee shop where I worked part-time. Philip would come in every morning for his coffee, and we'd chat while I made his drink. He was charming and ambitious, with a dry sense of humor that made me laugh. After weeks of flirting, Philip finally asked me out. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant near campus. I remember being so nervous I could barely eat my pasta, but Philip put me at ease with his easy conversation and genuine interest in getting to know me. By the end of the night, I knew there was something special between us. We officially started dating, and things moved quickly. Philip graduated that year but stayed in Columbus for a job at a local bank. I was thrilled that we wouldn't have to do long distance. We moved in together after I graduated 2 years later, renting a small apartment downtown. For the first few years, everything was great. We talked about marriage and our future together. Philip was supportive of my career aspirations, and I was his biggest cheerleader as he worked his way up at the bank. We'd spend weekends exploring new restaurants in the city or taking short trips to nearby towns. Ariana was always supportive of our relationship. She'd visit us in Columbus and we'd have girls' nights while Philip was working late. She teased me about when Philip was going to propose, saying she couldn't wait to be my maid of honor. I shared everything with her. My hopes for the future with Philip, my insecurities, everything. But as time went on, things started to change. Philip became more focused on his career, working longer hours and taking on more responsibilities at the bank. At first, I was understanding. I knew how important his job was to him, and I wanted to be supportive. But as weeks turned into months of barely seeing each other, I started to feel neglected. I tried talking to Philip about it multiple times. I'd suggest we set aside one night a week for a date night or that he try to be home for dinner more often. He'd agree in the moment, but nothing would change. He'd say things like, "This is just temporary," or "I'm doing this for our future," but the temporary situation seemed to become our new normal. I found myself spending more time alone or with friends while Philip worked late. I called Ariana often, venting my frustrations. She was always there to listen, offering words of encouragement and advice. She'd tell me to be patient, that Philip was probably just stressed, and things would get better. But they didn't get better. After months of feeling lonely and unimportant in my own relationship, I knew something had to change. I sat Philip down for a serious talk. I told him how unhappy I was, how I felt like we were growing apart. I asked if he still saw a future for us. Philip seemed surprised by my unhappiness. He admitted he'd been distracted by work, but insisted he still loved me and wanted to make things work. We agreed to try harder to prioritize our relationship and make more time for each other. For a few weeks, things improved. Philip made an effort to be home more, and we even took a weekend trip to a nearby lake. But slowly, old patterns emerged. Philip started working late again, canceling our plans at the last minute for work emergencies. After another few months of this cycle, I realized I couldn't keep living like that. So, after agonizing over the decision, I ended things with Philip when I was 25. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Despite our problems, I still loved Philip, but I knew I deserved someone who would prioritize our relationship. The breakup was hard, but I knew it was for the best. I threw myself into my own career, eventually landing a job at a marketing firm I loved. I spent time reconnecting with friends and family. Ariana was especially supportive during this time. She'd come visit me in Columbus, bringing ice cream and trashy movies. She listened to me cry about Philip and assured me I'd made the right choice. I was so grateful to have her support. Fast forward 3 years to last summer. I was 28 and in a much better place. I had a job I loved, great friends, and had even started casually dating again. Then one day, I got a text from Ariana asking to meet up. She seemed nervous, which was unusual for her. When we met at a cafe, she dropped a bombshell. She had been secretly dating Philip for the past 6 months. I was stunned. A million thoughts raced through my mind. How could my own sister do this to me? How long had this been going on? Was there overlap with when Philip and I were together? Ariana swore up and down that nothing happened while Philip and I were dating. She said they reconnected at a mutual friend's wedding about 7 months ago, and things just clicked. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to scream at her, but I was too shocked to say much. I just got up and left the cafe. For the next few weeks, I ignored calls and texts from both Ariana and Philip. I was hurt and angry and needed space to process everything. Eventually, I agreed to talk to Ariana. She apologized profusely and said she never meant to hurt me. She claimed she and Philip had real feelings for each other and it wasn't just some fling. I told her I felt betrayed and that it would take time for me to forgive her, if I ever could. That was about a year ago. Since then, things have been tense in our family. Our parents are caught in the middle, trying not to take sides. Extended family gatherings are awkward. Ariana and Philip are still together and seem serious about their relationship. I've tried to move on and focus on my own life, but it's hard. Every time I see them together, it reopens old wounds. Not just about Philip, but about feeling betrayed by my own sister. Ariana keeps trying to make things right, inviting me to dinners or suggesting we do things together like we used to, but I just can't bring myself to act like everything is normal. The real kicker came last week. Ariana called to tell me she and Philip are engaged. She wants me to be her maid of honor. I was speechless. How could she possibly think I'd be okay with that? I told her I needed time to think and hung up. Now I'm torn. Part of me wants to refuse and cut ties with both of them completely, But another part worries about permanently damaging my relationship with my sister and causing a rift in our family. My parents are urging me to forgive and move forward for the sake of family harmony. But I'm not sure I can do that. Am I wrong for still being upset about this? Should I just suck it up and be in the wedding for the sake of keeping the peace? Or should I stand my ground and refuse, even if it causes more family trauma? I feel lost and could use some outside perspectives on this mess. Date 1. It's been about 2 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me gain perspective and find the strength to stand up for myself. After a lot of thought, I decided I couldn't be Ariana's maid of honor or attend the wedding. It was a tough decision, but I knew in my heart it was the right one for me. I spent days agonizing over how to tell Ariana. I wrote out what I wanted to say, practiced in front of the mirror, and even role-played the conversation with a friend. Finally, I worked up the courage to meet with Ariana in person. We met at the same cafe where she had first told me about her relationship with Philip. As soon as I saw her, my stomach knotted up. Ariana looked excited, already talking about wedding plans before we even sat down. I had to interrupt her to say what I'd come to say. I explained that while I was trying to move past my anger, I wasn't ready to celebrate her relationship with Philip. I told her that asking me to be maid of honor felt insensitive given our history. I tried to be as calm and clear as possible, emphasizing that this was about protecting my own mental health, not punishing her. Ariana didn't take it well. Her face fell as I spoke, and by the time I finished, she was visibly angry. She accused me of being selfish and holding on to the past. She said I was ruining her special day and making everything about me. I did my best to stay calm, reiterating that this was a personal decision, not an attack on her, but Ariana wasn't hearing it. The conversation ended with her storming off, leaving me sitting alone in the cafe. In the weeks that followed, things got messy. Ariana told our parents and extended family that I was refusing to attend the wedding out of spite. She painted me as the villain who was trying to ruin her happiness. Some family members sided with her and started pressuring me to change my mind. Our Aunt Karen, who's always been a bit of a busybody, called me almost daily trying to convince me to reconsider. She'd say things like, "Family is everything, Angela. You'll regret this decision." Our cousin Mike, who's always been closer to Ariana, sent me a long text accusing me of being petty and immature. Even our parents, who had initially tried to stay neutral, started hinting that I should just go to the wedding to keep the peace. My mom would sigh heavily during our phone calls and say things like, "I just hate seeing you girls fight like this." My dad, never one for emotional conversations, awkwardly tried to bribe me by offering to pay for a vacation if I agreed to be in the wedding. But then something unexpected happened. Our cousin Lily, 32, reached out to me. Lily and I had never been particularly close. She's a few years older and lives in California, so we only really saw each other at big family events. But she sent me a text asking if we could talk. When we got on the phone, Lily revealed something that changed everything. She told me that about a year before Ariana got together with Philip, Ariana had tried to pursue Lily's husband, Mark, 34. Apparently, Ariana had sent flirty texts to Mark and even tried to kiss him at a family reunion. Mark shut it down immediately and told Lily, but they decided to keep it quiet to avoid family drama. Lily said she was telling me now because she felt guilty for staying silent. She said seeing how Ariana was treating me now made her realize she should have spoken up sooner. She apologized for not saying anything earlier and offered her support if I needed it. This revelation changed everything. It showed a pattern of behavior from Ariana that went beyond just dating my ex. I realized this wasn't just about me. Ariana had a history of disregarding other people's relationships. It made me question how many other incidents there might have been that I didn't know about. With Lily's permission, I shared this information with our parents. They were shocked and disappointed in Ariana. Mom broke down crying, saying she couldn't believe her daughter would behave this way. Dad got very quiet, which is always a sign he's deeply upset. It helped them understand why I was so hurt and why attending the wedding would be so difficult for me. Armed with this new information, I had another conversation with our parents. I explained that while I didn't want to cut Ariana out of my life entirely, I needed to set firm boundaries. This included not attending the wedding and limiting my interactions with her and Philip for the time being. My parents were much more understanding this time. Mom even apologized for pressuring me to go to the wedding, saying she now understood why it would be too painful. As for Ariana, when confronted about Lily's husband, she initially tried to deny it, but when faced with the evidence of the text messages Lily had saved, she broke down and admitted it was true. She swore it was a one-time mistake and begged everyone not to tell Philip. I'm not sure what will happen with Ariana and Philip's relationship now that this has come to light. Part of me feels guilty for potentially ruining their engagement, but I also feel like the truth needed to come out. Philip deserves to know what kind of person he's planning to marry. For now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I've started seeing a counselor to work through my feelings about everything that's happened. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to, someone who can offer strategies for dealing with family gatherings and setting healthy boundaries. I'm also spending more time with friends and pursuing hobbies I enjoy. I've taken up painting, something I used to love in high school but gave up when life got busy. It's been therapeutic to lose myself in creating something beautiful. I've also been spending more time outdoors, taking long walks in the park near my apartment. The fresh air and exercise have been good for clearing my head. It's not easy, but I'm taking it one day at a time. Some days are harder than others. There are moments when I miss the close relationship I used to have with Ariana, or when I feel angry all over again about the betrayal. But overall, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. I'm proud of myself for standing up for what I believe is right, even when it was difficult. I'm not sure what the future holds for my family. I hope that eventually we can find a way to heal and move forward. But for now, I'm focusing on taking care of myself and surrounding myself with people who respect and value me. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice and support. It's meant more than you know. Update 2. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and the situation has evolved in ways I never expected. I want to share what's been happening and get some advice on how to proceed. After the revelation about Ariana's behavior with Lily's husband, things in our family were tense for a while. Ariana and Philip postponed their wedding indefinitely to work through their issues. Our parents insisted that Ariana get counseling to address her behavior patterns. At first, Ariana was resistant and tried to downplay her actions. She'd make excuses, saying things like, "It was just harmless flirting," or "I was going through a rough time." But after Philip threatened to end their relationship, she finally agreed to seek help. She's been seeing a therapist regularly for the past few months. To everyone's surprise, including my own, Ariana's therapy seems to be making a real difference. About 2 months ago, she reached out to me and asked if we could talk. I was hesitant but agreed to meet her in a public place. We met at a small park near my apartment. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and families were out enjoying the weather. Ariana looked nervous as she approached me. We sat on a bench, and for a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Ariana took a deep breath and started talking. She gave me a heartfelt apology for dating Philip behind my back and for trying to pressure me into being her maid of honor. She acknowledged that her behavior had been selfish and hurtful. Ariana also apologized for her past actions with Lily's husband, recognizing how inappropriate and damaging that had been. What struck me most was that Ariana didn't make excuses or try to justify her actions. She took full responsibility and expressed genuine remorse. She told me that therapy had helped her recognize her pattern of seeking validation through relationships, even at the expense of hurting others. Ariana explained that she'd always felt insecure compared to me. She said she felt like she was living in my shadow. I was the older sister who seemed to have it all together, with a good job and a long-term relationship. She admitted that pursuing Philip and Lily's husband had been attempts to prove something to herself, to feel desirable and worthy. She said she understood if I couldn't forgive her, but she hoped we could start rebuilding our relationship slowly. She suggested we could start with occasional text check-ins and maybe work up to short coffee meetups if I was comfortable. I was touched by her sincerity but also wary. I told Ariana I appreciated her apology and was glad she was getting help. However, I explained that trust takes time to rebuild, and I wasn't ready to jump back into a close sister relationship. I agreed to her suggestion of starting with texts and seeing how things go. Over the past couple of months, Ariana and I have been exchanging occasional messages. They're mostly surface level, talking about work, sharing funny memes, that sort of thing. But it's been nice to have that line of communication open again without the heavy emotional weight. As for Ariana and Philip, they're still together but taking things slowly. Philip was understandably upset when he learned about the incident with Lily's husband, but he's cautiously giving Ariana another chance while she continues her therapy. They're no longer engaged, but they're working on rebuilding trust in their relationship. Our family dynamics are slowly improving, too. At a recent family dinner, there was less tension than there's been in months. Ariana and I were civil to each other, and while we're not back to our old closeness, it felt like a step in the right direction. Here's where I could use some advice. Last week, Ariana invited me to have dinner with her and Philip. She said they want to talk to me together and clear the air. Part of me is curious to hear what they have to say, but another part is anxious about facing them as a couple. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this step. On one hand, I can see that Ariana is making an effort to change and make amends. Her apology seems sincere, and I appreciate that she's been respecting my boundaries these past few months. It's clear that therapy is helping her understand her behavior better. On the other hand, the thought of sitting across a table from my sister and my ex still makes me uncomfortable. Philip and I haven't spoken directly since I found out about his relationship with Ariana. I'm not sure how I'll react seeing them together in a more intimate setting like a dinner. I'm also worried about dredging up old feelings. I've made a lot of progress in moving on from Philip and healing from the hurt of their betrayal. I don't want to risk undoing all that work if the dinner goes poorly. There's also a part of me that wonders if this dinner is too soon. Ariana and I have only recently started communicating again, and it's been very surface level. Am I ready to dive into deeper conversations with both her and Philip? What do you think I should do? Should I agree to the dinner and hear them out, or is it too soon? I want to be open to reconciliation if it's genuine, but I also don't want to rush into a situation that might set back my own emotional progress. Any thoughts or advice would be greatly appreciated. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the latest development in this ongoing family saga. After much consideration and talking it over with my therapist, I decided to accept Ariana and Philip's invitation to dinner. My therapist helped me prepare for the meeting, suggesting some techniques for managing my emotions and setting clear boundaries. We role-played potential scenarios, which helped me feel more confident going into the dinner. We met at a neutral restaurant, a new Italian place downtown that none of us had been to before. I arrived a few minutes early and waited nervously at the bar, sipping a glass of wine to calm my nerves. When Ariana and Philip walked in, I felt a mix of emotions. Anxiety, residual anger, but also a glimmer of hope that maybe we could move forward. Both Ariana and Philip seemed genuinely nervous, which was actually somewhat reassuring. It showed they understood the gravity of the situation. We were seated at a quiet table in the corner, away from other diners, which I appreciated. After we ordered, there was an awkward silence. Finally, Philip cleared his throat and started speaking. He apologized for the pain he caused me, both during our relationship and by dating Ariana. He admitted that he'd been immature and selfish, prioritizing his career over our relationship and then jumping into something with Ariana without considering my feelings. Philip explained that he'd done a lot of soul-searching over the past few months. He said he realized he had a pattern of running away from emotional challenges rather than facing them head-on. He told me he was also seeing a therapist to work on these issues. Ariana then spoke up, reiterating her apology from our previous meeting, this time with Philip present. She talked about how therapy had helped her recognize her pattern of seeking validation through relationships and how she was working on building her self-worth in healthier ways. She also apologized again for her behavior with Lily's husband, acknowledging how much damage her actions had caused to multiple relationships. What surprised me most was when they announced they had decided to call off their engagement. They explained that while they care for each other, they realized they rushed into things for the wrong reasons. They're still dating but are taking things much slower and focusing on individual growth. I listened to everything they had to say, taking time to process before responding. I told them that I appreciated their honesty and the effort they were making to address their issues. I explained that while I couldn't promise an immediate return to how things were before, I was open to slowly rebuilding trust and finding a new normal for our relationships. We ended up talking for hours, delving into old hurts and misunderstandings, but also sharing some laughs as we reminisced about happier times. It wasn't a magical fix-all, but it felt like a significant step forward. Since that dinner, things have been different, but in a positive way. Ariana and I have been having more meaningful conversations beyond just surface-level chats. We've even met up for coffee a couple of times. It's not the same carefree relationship we had before, but it feels like we're building something new and potentially stronger. We've started being more honest with each other about our feelings and insecurities. Ariana has opened up more about her feelings of inadequacy and her fear of being left behind. I've shared my own insecurities and how her actions made me question my own worth. These conversations aren't always easy, but they feel necessary and ultimately healing. As for Philip, we're not friends, but we can now be in the same room without it being awkward. At a recent family gathering, we were able to have a polite conversation about work without any underlying tension. It's a small step, but a significant one. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of my relationship with Ariana. I can see she's genuinely working on herself, and that means a lot to me. We're planning to start a monthly sister date, just the two of us, to continue rebuilding our bond. This whole experience has taught me a lot about forgiveness, setting boundaries, and the importance of open communication. It hasn't been an easy journey, but I feel like I've grown a lot through it all. Thank you to everyone who's followed this story and offered advice along the way. Your support has meant more than you know. While there's still work to be done, I feel hopeful about the future for the first time in a long while. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My husband's rich parents hated me and tried to make us sign an unfair prenup, so we decided to cut contact when we got married. But now my child has turned against me and is calling me a gold digger. I, a 44-year-old female, have been married to my husband, Jeremy, for almost 20 years. Jeremy and I met through friends in college. He was in a different department and was very outgoing and extroverted, whereas I was kind of shy and quiet. I was skeptical about dating him when he first asked me out, but he was really consistent, so I agreed and we stayed together for the entirety of our college lives. Everything about our relationship was perfect, apart from the fact that his parents did not like me. Actually, not liking me is a very tame way to put it. They hated me. He introduced me to his family after we had been together for a year. It took him that long because he had told me that his parents were not the easiest people to deal with, and he had to prepare us all for the first meeting. I had already introduced him to my family after we had been dating for a couple of months because I really liked him, and my family also seemed to really get along with him. He was sweet and wonderful to be around, and they did not have any complaints about him. However, it was very different for me when I first met his parents. There was no sense of warmth or friendliness when I went to their house for the first time, and it was all very formal. They barely smiled at me, and even when they were talking to me, I got the sense that I was being interviewed for a job, and they were not really just making conversation with me. I was very nervous and tried not to talk too much because I did not want to seem nervous and make a complete fool of myself. Jeremy honestly just came from a very different kind of family, and it was not something that I was used to, so I was kind of intimidated. They were rich, no doubt about it, but I guess they were equally closed off, and they did not approve of the fact that I was not somebody who belonged to their world. They were very cold towards me the first time that we met, and dinner at their place was an incredibly awkward affair for me. I was not even able to determine if I was able to make a decent first impression on them because they were literally so hard to read, and I went home not having any idea about whether they liked me or not. But I guess I should not have worried because that became very obvious to me in the next couple of years. My family is pretty down to earth. We don't come from a family that belongs to the same social class as my in-laws. My parents run a hair salon together, and it might not be the most glamorous job, but it paid the bills when I was growing up, and I am proud of my parents. They are the reason why my sister and I are educated today and are able to work the kind of jobs that we want to do, so I find it quite inspiring. But I think my in-laws would call it embarrassing. My father-in-law is a pretty famous divorce lawyer, and I had heard about him a couple of times even before I met Jeremy because he was that reputed. He even had a lot of ads all around the city and had a law firm of his own as well, so needless to say, he was pretty rich and had quite a high-end clientele. But instead of being humble about it, he and my mother-in-law were quite snobby and looked down upon me. They obviously never said it to my face before marriage, but I could tell. I'm not an idiot. Jeremy and I visited them about once every month, and every time I would try to win them over and fit in with them. I would turn into a completely different person around them just because I wanted them to like me, but it never worked, and I guess they could see right through me. Jeremy was the one who told me that I did not have to visit them with him or try so hard to get them to like me because it didn't matter to him if they liked me or not. What mattered was that he loved me, and his parents' opinions were not going to change that. Knowing that made me ease up a bit, and I decided that I was going to maintain my distance from them because they had been nothing but hostile to me every time that I was visiting them with Jeremy, and I did not feel comfortable around them. So that was that. But I feel like my decision to stop putting in an effort to get them to like me made them dislike me even more than they already did, and whenever we met after that, they would ignore me very pointedly, and it was very hard to miss. They met my parents as well at our graduation ceremony, and boy, was that bad. We introduced our families to each other for the first time that day, and they were even more horrible to my parents than they were to me, and I felt very insulted. I could even tell that Jeremy was very embarrassed because of the way that his parents were behaving with mine, and I knew that later on he took them aside and really tore into them because the way that things had gone down between our families had been really bad, and my parents were visibly upset. That was the day that I realized they might have the money, but they definitely did not have even an ounce of human decency or courtesy, and were definitely not as sophisticated and refined as they pretended to be in front of the world. Before that, I had been intimidated by them, but after that, I even started finding them awful, and I didn't want to have anything to do with them. After we graduated, I told Jeremy that I really wanted to be with him, but I could not stand his parents, especially after what had happened at the graduation ceremony and the way they had been absolutely nasty to my parents. So he told me that I did not have to worry about that because now he had talked to his parents, and they had promised him that they would try to be better and accept me and my family. I was skeptical, but I stayed with him because, in spite of his parents, I really loved him, and I still do. At 25, Jeremy finally decided to propose to me. We had been living together ever since we graduated from college, and he had a decent job, as did I. We were doing well for ourselves, and it was the perfect time to get married, so I said yes, and there was no looking back. Everybody was happy for us except for my in-laws, of course. They did not speak to anybody at the engagement party and just stood in a corner with a sour face. But by then I was used to them attending family events that I would host but never trying to be a part of, and I knew it was all obligatory for them. I was fine with it, though. It did not matter to me what they thought of me anymore because I was engaged to the man that I loved, and that was enough. I did not need their stamp of approval. So, in the months leading up to the wedding, I didn't think of anybody or anything apart from the wedding, and I was really busy. My parents were paying for the venue and my dress, and I expected my in-laws to cover the rest of the expenses. I did not speak to them about it obviously, but Jeremy had spoken with them, and they had agreed to it earlier. But about a month before the wedding, Jeremy came home quite pissed off and told me that we would have to arrange for the rest of the money for the wedding ourselves because he had decided to cut his parents off and did not want to speak to them anymore. And when I asked him why he would do such a thing, he told me that they were trying to get me to sign a prenup before the wedding, which had a lot of clauses that would be very insulting to me. For instance, it did not just demand that I disclose each and every detail about my financial status, like my property and assets and stuff, but also they wanted me to disclose everything about my parents and their finances. I thought that was crazy because I was the one getting married. My parents had nothing to do with any of this. And also, the agreement said that in case my in-laws passed away and we were still married, I would not receive anything from the inheritance and would also not be allowed to contest it. But the cherry on top was that they wanted me to agree that, in the event of a divorce, all the joint assets that we had purchased during the course of our marriage would go to Jeremy, and I would be left with nothing. I would also not be entitled to any sort of alimony, maintenance settlement, or whatever you want to call it, if our marriage was terminated. And if we had children together, I would also not receive any amount of child support, even if I had full custody of them. It was a crazy one-sided agreement, and nobody in their right mind would ever even consider it. Jeremy told me that his parents were trying to force him to get me to sign it before the wedding, probably in an ill-disguised attempt to get me to leave him, but sadly he was able to see through them and it didn't work. They had told him that they had just drawn up these papers so they could make sure that I was not after his money or his inheritance, and if I was not a gold digger, I would have no issues signing that document. I think they had taken me for a fool because the only person who would not have any issues signing a prenup like that would be an idiot, and I was not one. But anyway, after that, we had no contact with his parents, and it was great. Our wedding went really well, and we were pretty blissful after that. I was quite relieved that his parents were no longer a part of our lives, and they did not make any attempts to get back to Jeremy or even try to talk to him anymore after that. I guess their egos were bruised that we had decided to stay with each other, and they did not succeed in breaking us apart. They did not reach out to us after we announced our first pregnancy or even after I gave birth to my daughter, and neither did they reach out during the second. Jeremy and I have 2 children now, and things have been great. Our daughter, Ellie, is 16, and our son, Kyle, is 12. We are a happy family. But Ellie has been going through a bit of a teenage angst phase and has been rebelling. Her behavior has actually put a lot of strain on our relationship because, even though I can understand the teenage desire to stray away from your parents and experiment with your life, I still find it very difficult to let go of the control that most parents want, and I'm just really worried about her because she has been struggling at school, and I don't see her trying to do anything about it because all she does is gossip on her phone, and I hardly ever see her trying to study. I really want her to do well in life, but every time I talk to her, she just blows me off and it inevitably ends in a fight. It's just classic teenage behavior, and I know that she's going to come back to me, but for now we are going to be at loggerheads for a while, at least until she grows up a little bit. I know she still loves me, and obviously, I love her more than anything in the world, but we are just in a really difficult phase right now, and I know that we can get through it. Obviously, Jeremy has been really helpful during this time, and I think it's mostly him and Kyle kind of trying to keep the peace in the house. But yes, things have been tense between Ellie and me, and I have been trying my best, and we do have certain moments of love and affection like any other parent does with their child. Unfortunately, there has also been a lot of tension between the two of us. We are trying to work through it and navigate these new territories because we are both learning as we go. Speaking of parents, Jeremy also reconnected with them a couple of months ago after his father suffered from a massive cardiac arrest. His mother told him that he might have lost his life, and that led to his decision to reconcile with his parents because both of them are nearing 70, and he does not want to end things on bad terms with them. I was supportive of that decision because, at the end of the day, no matter how they are as people, they are still his parents, and I know that he misses them. So I told him that I did not have any issues with him trying to fix his relationship with his parents, and maybe someday even I would think about it, but for now, I think it was enough that he was trying to rebuild his relationship with them, and I did not want to get into it at the moment. I already had a lot on my plate with work and my relationship with my daughter, so I was not looking to take on extra responsibility and start trying to build a relationship with my in-laws as well. So we decided that he would try to keep in touch with them and visit them at least twice a month because he was busy as well and make sure that they were doing all right. I did not have to be a part of it, and on the days that he would be visiting his parents, I could stay at home and watch the kids. I was okay with it because it was only fair. This has been going on for the past 7 months maybe, and recently he told me that he wanted to introduce the children to his parents. This was a big move because, ever since they were born, they had never even met their grandparents on their father's side. They had met my parents and had spent a lot of time with them, but never my in-laws. They had always been told that their paternal grandparents did not want anything to do with our family. And well, it was the truth. They had pushed us to our limits, especially me, and we had only responded to it by cutting them off. I did not see anything wrong with that. So introducing our kids to their grandparents on their father's side was a big deal and was a very significant move. So obviously, Jeremy had to consult me before going through with it. He told me that his parents had been trying to get him to bring the kids over for months, and he had been putting it off, but now he thought it was finally time, and so he was talking to me about it. I thought about it for a couple of days and decided that it was fine by me because if Jeremy thought that it was fine, I trusted his judgment and I was okay with it. So I gave it the green light. Last weekend, he was supposed to take both Kyle and Ellie to see their grandparents. They had also been very pumped about it because it was a huge deal. But Kyle caught a really nasty cold a couple of days before he was supposed to go, and he was not able to leave the house because I did not want him infecting other people. So it was only Ellie who visited her grandparents, and I am so thankful for it because when she came back, She was completely brainwashed and had been turned against me. She was only supposed to spend a few hours at their place, but when Jeremy came back, he was alone. He told me that Ellie got along with her grandparents like a house on fire, and they had requested that she be allowed to spend the weekend with them because it was the first time that they were meeting and they wanted to catch up on all the time that they had lost, so he just couldn't say no. And even Ellie had said that she wanted to stay there because she did not want to leave the massive house that her grandparents lived in. I couldn't blame her either because her grandparents lived like kings, and we had a pretty nice but normal lifestyle compared to them, so it was only natural for her to want a taste of that. I was not exactly happy about it, but it had already been done, and I did not want to create an issue out of it, so I did not say anything at the time. But after the weekend, when Ellie came back home with Jeremy on Sunday evening, her attitude towards me had done a complete 180, and she was acting like I was her archenemy or something like that. For the next couple of days, she refused to talk to me normally and would not even look me in the eye when she spoke to me or when I asked her anything. I even tried to talk to her about her behavior and asked her why she was acting like that, and she told me that it was nothing. But I knew that it was something. She was ignoring me and acting like I was not even there in the same room whenever she was at home, and I just knew that something had shifted after she came back home from her grandparents' place, and I knew that they were responsible for it. I did talk to Jeremy about it, and he said that he thought something must have happened at school. But even when she would fight with her friends, she would never act that way with me, and I just knew that my in-laws had something to do with it for sure, but I couldn't exactly blame them for it without making sure of it because then I did not want to come off as somebody who was trying to ruin Jeremy's relationship with his parents. However, the evidence of that being true fell into my lap 2 days ago. I was in Ellie's room because I wanted to borrow her charger for my phone. But then, while looking for it, her journal fell on the floor from under her pillow. It was not the right thing to do, but I knew that she kept a pretty detailed account of her life, so I decided to take a peek to try and understand why she was acting that way with me. I know it was not right, but I just had to figure it out. So I flipped through the pages and found the most recent entries and started reading through them. I went to the date when she had been visiting her grandparents, and sure enough, there were almost 4 pages about how her grandparents had been filling her head with all sorts of crap about me. Apparently, they had told her that I was the one who was responsible for the fact that she had not been able to see them for so many years. They told her all sorts of lies, and she believed it because we were already having a rough patch like I told you guys, and they took advantage of it. They knew that we had been having problems because Jeremy had very casually mentioned it to them while he had been visiting them before, and they decided that they would use the opportunity to drive a wedge between me and Ellie. They had been successful in doing so because Ellie now believed that I had been the one to ruin Jeremy's relationship with his parents all those years ago. They had told her that I had forced them to cut them off and that their only mistake was to suggest that Jeremy and I move closer to them after marriage. I did not like that, and I decided that I would take all their money, but I would not let my husband see his parents. They actually told her that they had paid for the house that we lived in and had even taken care of all our expenses before we got married. Apparently, I had been living off of their money before I decided to cut ties with them because Jeremy got a great job of his own, and I did not need them anymore. They painted me as the perfect gold digger, and they were so convincing with their lies about it that my daughter ended up believing them. I immediately broke down after I read those pages because she had written it in her diary and said that she could no longer look at me like the same person, and it was very difficult for her to believe that she was my daughter. I called my husband up and I sent him those pages. I was really heartbroken and upset, and I told him that if he ever visited his parents again, I would file for a divorce. And he was just as shocked as I had been, and he only said that I did not need to worry about any of this. He would fix it all for me and then hung up. Since that day, things have been really tense, and his parents have been blaming me for the fact that he has cut them off yet again. Jeremy and I did have a discussion about all of this with Ellie, but she was just outraged that I had gone through her diary, and she refuses to talk to me. I have been trying, but it's not working, and we don't know what to do right now. As if that was not bad enough, I also have my in-laws breathing down my neck, constantly reminding me that I am the bad guy here. They have somehow gotten a hold of my phone number and email address and keep sending me messages from various accounts and numbers telling me that I am ruining everybody's life. They are calling me egoistic and self-centered and are really cursing me out, which is really bad for me right now because I'm already going through a lot. I don't need this as well. They think that they did not do anything wrong and are calling me selfish because I was the one who always forced Jeremy to stop seeing his parents and breaking their family apart. It's been so difficult that I don't even know if I did the right thing by telling Jeremy that I don't want him to see his parents anymore. I did for telling my husband that he's not allowed to see his parents anymore because they tried to brainwash my daughter into turning against me. Update 1. So I spoke to Jeremy about what I was going through like most of you suggested, and talking to him helped me a lot. I was avoiding that because he was already really upset because of his parents, and I was trying not to add on to it. Besides, I was already feeling like I was being a burden on the family, and so I did not want to talk to him and make myself feel worse because I was afraid, which is so stupid because I've been married to him for 2 decades and I should know him better. He's my husband, and he's the only person I can truly talk to about these things. So I told him what was bothering me, and the only thing that he did before anything else was just hug me for 5 minutes and tell me that everything was going to be fine. I think I must have cried for at least half an hour after that because it was just so sweet, and it reminded me exactly why I had married this man. He just always knew exactly what to do to make me feel better, and I don't know how I got so lucky. But anyway, we had a discussion, and I told him about the messages that his parents had been sending me, and he told me that he would put an end to it. I didn't need to worry about that. And then I told him that I also felt bad that my daughter was not talking to me anymore. That's where we kind of hit a snag because that was a very delicate and sensitive matter, and all things said and done, I had actually invaded her privacy, and that was not right. But then what she was doing was also not okay, and it was a very difficult situation to navigate. Eventually, we decided that we would talk to her, but Jeremy would do most of the talking because right now she was more likely to respond to him than to me. So that's the plan right now, and I just hope that it works because she has been giving me the cold shoulder for almost a week now, and it's very difficult for me to deal with as a mother. Update 2. Hi guys, so Jeremy and I finally had that discussion with Ellie, and we have decided that she and I are going to try out therapy and talk to a counselor. Jeremy sort of acted like the mediator while we were talking, and that really helped us communicate. She told me that she always feels like I try to control her life and that makes her feel like less of an individual, and that's why she always goes out of her way to do exactly the opposite of what I tell her to do, sort of like the whole reverse psychology shindig. Besides, she has enough problems to deal with at school, like drama with her friends and the fact that she has really bad grades in a couple of subjects, and I'm just adding to it by being overbearing at home. So I tried to understand where she was coming from and also explained to her that I was only looking out for her because I wanted her to succeed in life, and when she did not listen to me, I felt like she had no respect for me, and that made me feel awful about myself. I also told her that the fact that her grandparents had been able to make her doubt me so easily was also something that really got to me, and I was very disappointed about that. She apologized to me for it and told me that the only reason she even believed them was because subconsciously, maybe she wanted a reason to hurt me because she was angry about everything, and I guess that makes sense. But it's not something that we can solve on our own, so we have to speak to a professional because, as much as I love my husband, he's not qualified for this job. As of now, we are actively trying to fix our relationship, and I hope that it works out for us. Until then, it's back to Kyle and Jeremy maintaining the peace of the family, but fingers crossed everything will be all right in no time. Update 3. Hey there, a lot of you have been asking for an update on the situation, and well, here it is. So it has been almost 4 months since my last update, and things have been going pretty well. Ellie and I have regular therapy sessions together every weekend. She and I are trying to work on our relationship, and I think we are doing a good job because the fights that we used to have decreased considerably, and now the pressure is off my husband and my son to keep us from exploding all the time. It was not fair to them, but they handled us like champions, and I'm so proud of their emotional maturity. We have also decided to spend more time together as a family and are trying to make it a point to have one family getaway at least one weekend every month. I think it's good for us to bond because it's really helping all of our mental health as well. And the best part is that Ellie is also doing way better at school now. Her grades have improved considerably, and I think it's because I don't nag her all the time anymore, and so she actually puts in an effort on her own without me having to ask her. So that's great, and I am so proud of her. My son is also doing great, and both my kids have given me so many reasons to be proud of them. My husband and I are also amazing and in love. Unfortunately for his parents, they were not able to break us up, no matter how hard they tried. The messages stopped a couple of days after I told Jeremy about it because he told them that he would expose them on social media and even press charges against them if it came down to it if they did not stop with their messages, and that worked. It got them to stop, and now we are back to not speaking to them ever again. So it's all good right now and I can't complain. Life is great. Thank you so much, all of you, for checking in. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I chose my wife over my toxic family. A year later, my mom showed up crying and begging to meet her granddaughter. I never thought I'd be sharing a story like this, but here I am. My name is Aaron, 28M, and I've always been proud of my close-knit family. We weren't perfect, but I believed we had a special bond that could weather any storm. That was until my wife, Sophia, 27F, opened my eyes to a harsh reality I've been blind to for far too long. Growing up in a small town in Oregon, my family was known for our free-spirited approach to life. My parents, Glenn, 55M, and Maria, 53F, were high school sweethearts who married young and had 3 kids in quick succession. They raised us with a hands-off approach, letting us make our own mistakes and learn from them. We were encouraged to express ourselves and form our own opinions, no matter how unconventional. This parenting style led to a strong bond between me, my older sister, Sam, 30F, and my younger brother, Clarence, 25M. We were each other's best friends, confidants, and partners in crime. I remember countless summer nights spent in our treehouse, planning adventures and dreaming about our futures. Even as we grew older and our interests diverged, that core connection remained. Sam was always the rebel of the family. She dyed her hair bright colors, got tattoos as soon as she turned 18, and was vocal about her political beliefs. Clarence, on the other hand, was the peacemaker. He had a knack for diffusing tense situations with his quick wit and easygoing nature. And me? I was somewhere in the middle, the bridge between my siblings' contrasting personalities. We remained close even after we all moved out and started our own lives. Sam became a successful graphic designer in Portland. Clarence pursued his passion for environmental science in Seattle, and I stayed closer to home, working as a high school teacher in our hometown. Despite the distance, we made it a point to gather at our parents' house every Sunday for dinner. These weekly dinners were a tradition that started when Sam left for college. Mom worried about us drifting apart, so she instituted mandatory family dinners whenever we were all in town. What started as an obligation soon became the highlight of our week. The dinners were filled with laughter, heated debates, and the occasional arm wrestling match, a family tradition to settle minor disputes. I always looked forward to these gatherings, seeing them as a testament to our family's strength and unity. It was at one of these dinners that I first introduced Sophia to my family, 3 years ago. Sophia and I met at a local coffee shop where she worked part-time while finishing her nursing degree. I was immediately drawn to her warm smile and quick wit. We bonded over our shared love of 80s movies and terrible puns. After a whirlwind romance, I knew she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. When I first brought Sophia to a family dinner, everything seemed perfect. My family welcomed her with open arms, and she appeared to fit right in. Sam and Sophia hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love of art. Clarence regaled her with stories of his latest research projects, and my parents treated her like a daughter they'd always known. We got married a year later in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard. It was a perfect day, filled with love and laughter. I felt like the luckiest man alive, having the woman I loved and a family that adored her, or so I thought. About 6 months into our marriage, I started noticing changes in Sophia's behavior. She became less enthusiastic about our family gatherings. At first, I brushed it off as her being tired from her new job at the local hospital. But as time went on, her reluctance to spend time with my family became more apparent. I remember one Sunday when Sophia claimed she had a migraine and couldn't attend dinner. I offered to stay home with her, but she insisted I go. When I returned, I found her curled up on the couch, her eyes red from crying. When I asked what was wrong, she brushed it off, saying she was just feeling emotional due to the pain. These incidents became more frequent. Sophia made excuses not to attend family events, or when she did come, she'd be quiet and withdrawn. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant, outgoing woman I fell in love with. One night, after returning from a particularly heated dinner at my parents' house, where the topic of discussion had been the upcoming local elections, Sophia broke down. She told me that my family had been making her feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. She said they would gang up on her during discussions, dismiss her opinions, and make subtle jabs at her background and beliefs. I was shocked. I had never noticed any of this behavior. In my eyes, our discussions were just passionate debates, not personal attacks. I assured Sophia that she must be misinterpreting things and that my family would never intentionally make her feel bad. This led to our first major argument as a married couple. Sophia accused me of dismissing her feelings and siding with my family over her. She brought up specific incidents, like the time Sam had made a sarcastic comment about Sophia's small-town views, or when my mother had criticized her career choice, suggesting that nursing wasn't ambitious enough. I felt caught in the middle, unable to believe that the family I loved so much could be causing my wife such distress. I tried to rationalize their behavior, explaining that Sam's sarcasm was just her way of joking and that my mother probably meant well with her career advice. As months passed, the situation only worsened. Sophia's attendance at family gatherings became sporadic, and when she did come, the tension was palpable. I started noticing small things. A cutting remark from Sam here, a dismissive wave from my mother there, but I still couldn't bring myself to believe it was as bad as Sophia claimed. I remember one particularly uncomfortable dinner where the topic of discussion was immigration policies. Sophia, whose parents had immigrated from Mexico, tried to share her perspective, but before she could finish speaking, my mother interrupted her, saying, "Oh, honey, you're too young to understand the complexities of these issues." The dismissive tone in my mother's voice was unmistakable, and I saw Sophia visibly deflate. Things came to a head last Thanksgiving. We were all gathered at my parents' house, and the conversation turned to the recent presidential election. Sophia, who has always been passionate about social issues, voiced her opinion on a controversial policy. What followed was a barrage of arguments from my family, each one becoming more personal and hurtful. Sam accused Sophia of being naive and uninformed. Clarence, usually the peacemaker, remained silent, avoiding eye contact with everyone. My father tried to change the subject, but my mother doubled down, making a comment about how Sophia's background was clouding her judgment. I watched as my wife, the strong and confident woman I fell in love with, seemed to shrink before my eyes. She excused herself from the table, and I found her crying in the guest room. It was then that the full weight of what had been happening hit me. I confronted my family, demanding to know why they had been treating Sophia this way. Their responses ranged from denial to justification. Sam claimed she was just engaging in healthy debate. Clarence mumbled an apology but said he didn't want to get involved. My father looked uncomfortable but remained silent. It was my mother's response that shocked me the most. She said that Sophia was too sensitive and needed to toughen up if she wanted to be part of our family. She went on to say that she was just trying to help Sophia improve herself and fit in better with our family dynamic. I left that night with Sophia, feeling like my world had been turned upside down. The family I had idolized for so long suddenly seemed cruel and exclusionary. I realized that in my blind devotion to them, I had failed to protect and support the woman I vowed to love and cherish. Now I find myself at a crossroads. Sophia and I are expecting our first child, a surprise we discovered just a week after the Thanksgiving disaster. She's made it clear that she doesn't want our baby exposed to the toxic environment my family has created. Part of me understands and agrees, but another part mourns the loss of the family I thought I had. I've cut off contact with most of my family members, except for my dad, who seems to be the only one who understands the gravity of the situation. He's been calling regularly, apologizing for not speaking up and offering to mediate, but I'm not sure if that's enough to repair the damage that's been done. I love Sophia, and I want to build a healthy, happy life with her and our child, but I can't help feeling a sense of loss for the family relationships I once cherished. The treehouse where we shared our dreams, the Sunday dinners filled with laughter, the inside jokes that only we understood. All of it seems tainted now. How do I move forward from here? How do I balance being a good husband and father with the lingering attachment I feel towards my family? The thought of my child growing up without knowing their aunts, uncle, and grandparents breaks my heart. But the thought of subjecting Sophia and our baby to the same treatment she's endured is unbearable. I find myself lying awake at night, replaying memories from my childhood, trying to pinpoint when things started to go wrong. Was our family always like this and I was too blinded by love to see it? Or did something change along the way? As Sophia's pregnancy progresses, these questions become more urgent. We need to make decisions about how to move forward, how to create a healthy environment for our child, but every choice feels like it comes with a heavy price. I know I need to be strong for Sophia and our baby, but some days the weight of this situation feels overwhelming. I miss my family, but I'm also angry at them. I love Sophia and want to protect her, but I feel guilty for not seeing the truth sooner. Any advice on how to navigate this complex situation would be appreciated. How do I protect my wife and future child while also dealing with the loss of the family I thought I had? How do we move forward and create a positive future when the past feels so complicated? Update 1. It's been 3 months since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone who took the time to respond and offer advice. Your words helped me gain perspective and gave me the strength to take some difficult but necessary steps. After much soul-searching and long conversations with Sophia, I decided to confront my family one last time. I arranged a meeting at a neutral location, the local park where we used to have family picnics when we were kids. I chose this spot hoping it would remind everyone of happier times and the bond we once shared. Sophia chose not to attend, which I completely understood and supported. The days leading up to the meeting were filled with anxiety. I found myself reminiscing about the good times, building sandcastles with Sam at this very park, teaching Clarence how to ride a bike on these paths, Mom and Dad cheering us on from the sidelines. It made what I had to do even harder. When the day arrived, I got to the park early and sat on our favorite bench, the one with our initials carved into it from years ago. As I waited, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to fix this. My family arrived together, Mom and Dad in the front, Sam and Clarence trailing behind. The atmosphere was tense from the start. We exchanged awkward greetings and sat down at a nearby picnic table. I took a deep breath and began. I laid out every instance of mistreatment that Sophia had experienced, backed up by specific examples and dates. I talked about the sarcastic comments, the dismissive attitudes, the way they ganged up on her during discussions. I explained how their behavior had not only hurt my wife, but also put a strain on our marriage and was now threatening the relationship I would have with my unborn child. As I spoke, I watched their faces carefully. My dad, Glenn, looked pained and remorseful. He kept shaking his head as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sam's expression was a mix of defiance and shock, while Clarence looked like he wanted to disappear into thin air. Their reactions were mixed. My dad was the first to speak. He admitted that he had noticed some of the behavior but had failed to speak up, something he deeply regretted. He talked about how he was raised to avoid confrontation and how that had led him to stay silent even when he knew things were wrong. The pain in his voice was evident, and for a moment, I saw the father I remembered from my childhood: kind, caring, and always trying to do the right thing. Sam was defensive at first. She argued that her comments were never meant to be hurtful, that it was just her way of joking around. But as the conversation progressed and I gave more specific examples, I saw the realization dawn on her face. She began to understand the impact of her words and actions. There was a moment when she tried to make excuses, bringing up times when Sophia had disagreed with her, but I stood firm. I explained that disagreement was fine, but the way they had treated Sophia went far beyond simple disagreement. Clarence's reaction surprised me the most. My usually quiet brother broke down and confessed that he had always felt uncomfortable with how the family treated Sophia, but was too afraid to go against the grain. He talked about feeling caught between loyalty to the family and knowing that what was happening was wrong. It was a side of Clarence I had never seen before, and it made me realize how much this situation had affected him too. The most shocking and disappointing reaction came from my mother, Maria. She remained steadfast in her belief that Sophia was the problem, not the family. She accused me of betraying the family and claimed that Sophia had brainwashed me against them. She brought up incidents from our childhood, times when she said she had sacrificed for us, as if that justified her behavior toward Sophia. Her words were hurtful, but they also provided clarity. I realized that my mother's behavior was the root of much of the toxicity in our family dynamic. It was a painful realization, seeing the woman who had raised me, who I had always seen as loving and supportive, in this new light. The conversation lasted for hours. There were tears, raised voices, moments of understanding, and moments of frustration. By the end, we had come to a resolution of sorts. My dad, Sam, and Clarence agreed to attend family counseling to work on their behavior and communication skills. They also promised to make individual apologies to Sophia, but only when she felt ready to hear them. My mother, however, refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, she stood up abruptly. She said that if I chose Sophia over the family, I would no longer be welcome in her life. Then she walked away, leaving us all in stunned silence. It was a painful moment, watching her retreating figure, knowing that this might be the last time I saw her for a while. But it also felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. In the weeks that followed, I've had several one-on-one conversations with my dad, Sam, and Clarence. They've been making efforts to understand where they went wrong and how they can do better. Sam even sent Sophia a heartfelt letter, apologizing for her behavior and expressing a desire to make amends. Clarence has been calling regularly, asking about the pregnancy and offering support. Sophia has been cautiously optimistic about these developments. While she's not ready to jump back into family gatherings, she's open to the idea of slowly rebuilding relationships, starting with individual meetings once the baby is born. As for my mother, I haven't heard from her since the day in the park. My dad tells me she's still angry and hurt, but he's hopeful that with time and the arrival of her grandchild, she might come around. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm leaving the door open for the possibility of reconciliation if she's willing to acknowledge her behavior and make genuine changes. For now, Sophia and I are focusing on preparing for the arrival of our baby. We've been attending birthing classes and setting up the nursery. Last weekend, we painted the room a soft yellow, and as we worked side by side, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. It's been amazing to see Sophia relaxed and happy, free from the stress that my family used to cause her. Her smile has returned, and she's back to cracking terrible puns that never fail to make me laugh. We've been talking more openly about our feelings and our hopes for the future. It feels like we're rediscovering each other and falling in love all over again. I know we still have a long road ahead of us. There are still moments when I feel a pang of sadness thinking about the family gatherings we're missing, the inside jokes I can no longer share. But then I look at Sophia, see her hand resting on her growing belly, and I know I've made the right choice. I'm learning to be the husband and soon-to-be father that Sophia and our child deserve, even if it means redefining what family means to me. It's not always easy, but every day I'm more certain that it's worth it. To those who might be facing similar situations, I want to say that it's okay to prioritize your own family, the one you've chosen over the one you were born into. It's not betrayal. It's growth. And while it might be painful, it can also be incredibly freeing. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and our lives have changed dramatically. Our daughter Lily was born 2 months ago, and she's absolutely perfect. The moment I held her in my arms for the first time, I knew that all the difficult decisions and painful conversations had been worth it. Becoming a father has given me a new perspective on life and family, reinforcing my commitment to creating a healthy environment for Lily to grow up in. The arrival of Lily has brought about some unexpected developments in our family situation. My dad, Sam, and Clarence have been making consistent efforts to mend their relationships with Sophia. They've been attending family counseling sessions regularly and have shown genuine remorse for their past behavior. About a month before Lily was born, Sophia felt ready to meet with them individually. These meetings were emotional but productive. My dad was the first to visit. He brought a handmade wooden rocking chair, a family heirloom that he had refurbished himself. As he presented it to Sophia, his eyes welled up with tears. He apologized profusely for his silence in the face of the mistreatment she had endured. Sophia, though initially guarded, was moved by his sincerity. Sam's visit was next. She arrived with a sketchbook full of designs for Lily's nursery, a peace offering of sorts. The conversation was awkward at first, but as Sam opened up about her own insecurities and how they had influenced her behavior, Sophia began to soften. By the end of the visit, they were tentatively planning a day out together after the baby was born. Clarence's meeting was perhaps the most surprising. My usually reserved brother arrived with a stack of parenting books and a heartfelt letter. He confessed that he had always admired Sophia's strength and conviction, and that his silence had come from a place of cowardice, not agreement with the family's behavior. Sophia appreciated his honesty, and they ended up talking for hours about their hopes for Lily's future. When Lily was born, we decided to allow them to visit us in the hospital. It was a tense moment at first, but seeing their joy at meeting Lily helped ease some of the lingering awkwardness. Sophia was understandably guarded, but she appreciated their respectful behavior and the effort they were making. Since then, we've been slowly integrating them back into our lives. We've had a few dinners at our house, where the focus has been on getting to know each other again and bonding with Lily. These gatherings have been peaceful and pleasant, a stark contrast to the hostile environment of the past. The most surprising turn of events, however, involves my mother, Maria. About a month after Lily was born, she reached out to me. She asked to meet alone at a local coffee shop. I was apprehensive but agreed, hoping for some resolution. When we met, I hardly recognized the woman sitting across from me. Gone was the defensive, domineering mother I had known. Instead, I found a tearful, remorseful woman who had spent months reflecting on her behavior. She confessed that after our confrontation in the park, she had spiraled into a depression. It forced her to take a hard look at herself and her actions. She had started seeing a therapist who helped her understand the toxic patterns in her behavior and the damage she had caused to her relationships. Maria apologized profusely for her treatment of Sophia and for the way she had manipulated family dynamics for years. She expressed a deep desire to make amends and to be a part of Lily's life, but she also said she would understand if we weren't ready for that. I was stunned by this change in my mother. While I was touched by her apology, I made it clear that rebuilding our relationship would be a slow process and that Sophia's feelings would be the priority. Maria agreed, saying she was willing to do whatever it took to earn back our trust. I shared this development with Sophia, and while she was skeptical at first, she agreed to a carefully controlled meeting. We invited Maria to our house, with my dad present as a buffer. The meeting was awkward and emotional, but it ended with Maria making a heartfelt apology to Sophia and getting to meet her granddaughter for the first time. We're taking things day by day. Maria is not fully integrated back into our lives, but she's making efforts. She's joined the others in family counseling and has been respectful of our boundaries. It's a work in progress, but I'm cautiously optimistic. As for Sophia and me, our relationship has grown stronger through all of this. We're learning to communicate better, to stand up for each other, and to put our little family first. Watching Sophia with Lily fills me with joy and reaffirms that I made the right choice in prioritizing their well-being. The road ahead is still long, and I know there will be bumps along the way, but for the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful about the future of our expanded family. Update 3. It's been a year since my last update, and I'm happy to report that things have continued to improve. Lily just celebrated her first birthday, and the party was a testament to how far we've come as a family. Over the past year, we've been slowly rebuilding relationships and establishing new, healthier dynamics. My dad, Sam, and Clarence have become regular fixtures in our lives. They've proven their commitment to change through consistent actions and respect for our boundaries. Sophia has grown more comfortable around them, and it's heartwarming to see them doting on Lily. My mother, Maria, has made remarkable progress. She's continued with her therapy and has become an active participant in our family counseling sessions. Her relationship with Sophia has improved significantly. While they may never be best friends, there's a mutual respect and understanding between them now. One of the most significant changes has been in our family gatherings. We've started a new tradition of monthly family dinners at our house. These dinners are a far cry from the tense, argumentative affairs of the past. There's laughter, genuine conversations, and a palpable sense of love and support. We've established clear guidelines for these gatherings. Everyone knows that respectful communication is non-negotiable, and we've all learned to be more mindful of each other's feelings and perspectives. If discussions become heated, we have strategies in place to de-escalate and return to neutral ground. Sophia has blossomed in this new environment. She's more confident in expressing her opinions, and it's beautiful to see her forming individual bonds with my family members. She and Sam have even started a book club together, something I never would have imagined possible a year ago. As for me, I've learned valuable lessons about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I've become a better husband and father, always putting Sophia and Lily's well-being first. My relationship with my family has evolved into something more mature and balanced. Lily is the center of everyone's world. It's amazing to see how her presence has motivated everyone to be their best selves. She's growing up surrounded by love and positive examples of conflict resolution and personal growth. Of course, it hasn't all been smooth sailing. We've had setbacks and moments of tension. There have been times when old habits threatened to resurface, but we faced these challenges head-on, always returning to our commitment to do better. Looking back on where we were 2 years ago, the transformation seems almost unbelievable. We've gone from a family fractured by toxicity and misunderstanding to one that's stronger, more compassionate, and truly supportive. I'm under no illusion that our work is done. Maintaining healthy relationships requires ongoing effort and vigilance, but I'm no longer daunted by this task. Instead, I'm excited about the future we're building together. As we move forward, Sophia and I are excited about expanding our family. We're trying for a second child, knowing that this time we'll be bringing a baby into a family that's ready to offer nothing but love and support. Thank you to everyone who has followed our journey and offered support along the way. Your encouragement has meant more than you know. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Boyfriend hates my weight loss. Wishes I was still overweight so no one else would desire me, and now I question our relationship. I, 21F, have been dating my boyfriend, Adam, 28M, for almost 3 years now. I feel like some context is needed to accurately describe our situation. When I was 15, my older brother passed away in a car accident, and it threw me into a depression where I became very overweight. He was my best friend and meant the world to me. Losing him led me into the worst years of my life. A few months after I turned 18, I met Adam. He was one of my friend's older brother, and we hit it off. He's smart, charismatic, and I loved his sense of humor. Adam is also heavy, but he was so comfortable in his skin. It really made me admire his confidence. I couldn't stand to even look at myself in a mirror. So this last year I buckled down and lost weight, a very significant amount, and now I am even below my high school weight. I've never been this fit in my life, and I feel so good about myself. My 21st birthday was this last Saturday, and Adam and my friends had planned a party for me. Unfortunately, Adam had a family emergency, so he wasn't going to be around for my birthday. I was completely okay with this and reassured him that it was fine. When I drove him to the airport, my friend Andrea recommended that we should instead go to a strip club. I'd like to reiterate that it would have been a women's-only strip club. The next time I talked to Adam, I told him about the change in plans, and he was very adamant that he didn't want me to go. He said it wasn't that he didn't trust me, it's that he didn't trust my friends. I ended up dropping the subject to not cause him further stress, and we ended up just having the party they originally planned. Adam arrived today, and I felt something was off. Something has been off since I lost weight. I kept badgering him until he finally opened up. We talked, and he eventually told me that we don't even look like we belong together anymore. He brought up an instance where we were at the grocery store a week ago, and a guy was asking me questions about watermelons in the fruit section. It was a casual conversation, but he referred to my boyfriend as my brother, and I quickly corrected him. The guy apologized, said we looked similar, and walked off. At the time, my boyfriend laughed it off and didn't bring it up again. He then said something that pissed me off so bad. He said, "Sometimes I wish you were still big so no one else would want you." I lost all sympathy and quickly corrected him. I told him even when I was a big girl, guys hit on me all the time, and just like I always do, I told them I have a boyfriend that I love. He looked dumbfounded when I said this. I told him how effed up it was, that he wishes that I was back at the size where I was depressed and hated myself. He told me he misspoke and I am blowing things out of proportion. We argued more, and he ended up leaving to his brothers to give me space. I've been sitting here just pissing myself off about what he said. Did he really think I was that unattractive when I was bigger? So why did he date me? Did he think I was desperate to be with someone because I was so fat? I just need some third-party advice. Am I overreacting? Update 1. I've been laying here in the dark, and I've read basically all the comments, and I think an update is warranted. Basically, Adam and I are taking a break, and I've been crying my eyes out for the last few hours. He came home today, and we both agreed that we need to talk and get everything out in the open. He started off by apologizing for what he said, particularly that, "Sometimes I wish you were still big so no one else would want you part." I asked if he thought I was unattractive when I was bigger, and he said no, but he doesn't understand why I'm dieting and exercising the way I am. Adam said I shouldn't have to cook 2 different meals and should just eat what he does, and going to the gym 6 times a week is obsessive. I told him that it makes me happy, bettering myself, and he said that it has completely changed me. Adam went on to talk about how all I really care about is my looks now. He said he liked my hair how it used to be before I went to a stylist. He liked how I used to paint my own nails instead of getting them done, and how I used to never wear makeup instead of how I have to have some on now before I go out. Adam then said he knows I lost weight because I was unhappy with myself, but he was always happy with me, and he doesn't understand why I have to keep trying to make myself hotter when I was already hot. We talked back and forth, but it felt like I was just doing everything wrong. Adam said that I don't ever want to do things he enjoys anymore, like play video games with him or binge-watch movies, and he feels like I'm a different person. I have pushed him to go on walks with me or go to the gym in the past, but he's told me no, so I figured we just had our different hobbies. I feel bad because I see from his point I have changed, and I may not be the girl he fell in love with. I told him I love him, and he said he loves me too, but we need to separate for a bit and figure out if we're best for each other. I didn't argue. I just said okay and let him pack his things and leave. He's letting me stay in the apartment until I can move my stuff out. I've been crying my eyes out, and everything feels like a blur. I don't know where to go from here, and I feel like I ruined my first real relationship. You are very young. I know it sounds cliché, but you will find someone else who you are more compatible with in the future. It hurts right now, but you just need time. Be strong. Oop. Well, at the time it felt like me changing my appearance wasn't so much of an issue since he never complained about it, but I see now I was wrong. Now replaying everything in my mind, his reactions have always been indifferent whenever I would show off my hair or nails to him. I still would play video games and watch movies with him, but it wasn't as often as it used to be. For a time, that's all we did every day. I do appreciate your input, and I know it may sound dumb, but I'm holding out hope we work things out. Now for some comment where Opie replayed before the update. Comment 1. Good luck, but you're gonna get hit on and realize you're missing out on a lot of fun. I'm surprised he asked for the break. Seems he would be extremely worried that you will meet someone new and leave him. Opie. From what he said, he wants us to take some time apart and connect again. I was also confused by what this meant for us, but he doesn't want us to see other people for now. I know most people are suggesting we split up, but I get this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach when I consider it. Comment 2. No, you didn't ruin your first real relationship. You are taking a step back from someone who is not supportive or respects you. Opie. Yes, and that's one thing that always bothered me. It's so hard having to eat clean and healthy when I had to cook him burgers and other deliciousness. He just never grasped that eating that would have slowed my progress and made me feel awful. Comment 3. The right partner will celebrate and nourish your growth. He's not that. He was only meant to be in your life for a chapter, not the entire book. I'm on a similar journey as you. My husband jokes that I'm not the woman he married, but he supports my journey. We don't need to make 2 meals, which is silly to begin with. If he doesn't want what you're having, he can make his own meals because he eats healthy with me even when he would rather not. We have a lot of healthy recipes that work for our family that are pretty good and serve my calorie, protein, and fiber goals. I wanted to get into hiking, so he got into it with me. When I go on walks, he will sometimes come with me. He has a bad knee, so can't do it all the time. He supports me going to the gym also 6 or 7 days/week, and after several years is talking about joining up too. True partners will support you. They will find ways to compromise, i.e., after you're back from the gym, why don't we cuddle up and watch a movie together? Instead of trying to keep you at their level, they will be excited to see you grow even if they aren't ready for that same growth yet. Opie. Honestly, hearing about how you are with your husband sounds so nice. I think I just got into the habit of accepting that Adam is the way he is with the food situation. I knew he was unhappy eating what I ate, and sometimes he wouldn't eat my food at all, so I would make him what he wanted to make him happy. I show love by doing things for others, and I think I did that a lot with him. I would ask Adam to come with me on walks or even bring up the gym, but it was never an "I'd think about it" response, just always a no. I see that Adam really hasn't compromised with me on things I want to do, but I can't help but feel bad because I was the one that changed our dynamic. I just don't want to go back to wasting hours and days in front of a screen. Update 2. To get to the point, I broke up with Adam a few days ago, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. Things have been hectic, and I'm settling into my new situation. Last week, I had decided it was time for me to move out of the apartment. Adam made it clear that our relationship wasn't going to improve unless we took time apart, and as bad as I felt, I knew he wasn't going to come back until I was gone. I knew I wasn't going to be able to move all my stuff by myself, so I decided to ask a coworker if they could help me. The only heavy things I had were basically my bed frame and dresser. The rest were just boxes and suitcases full of clothes. Last Monday, I asked my coworker, David, if he could help me move my stuff into my parents' garage. I know he used to work for a moving company and he has a truck, so I was hoping he could do it for $100. I showed him pictures of my stuff and he said he would just have to take apart my bed frame, but yeah, he could do it on Thursday, which was his day off. I didn't have that day off, but I had PTO to cover it, so it was fine. Thursday comes, and David shows up to the apartment. I show him where everything is and he goes out to his truck to get his tools. It wasn't more than like a minute or two when I hear Adam's voice yelling, "Did you have sex with my girlfriend?" I immediately go into the living room and see David with his hands up looking very confused, and Adam asking him, "Did you sleep with her?" I swear this was the most humiliating thing that has ever happened to me. I could feel my face get red. I go over and grab Adam's hand and pull him into the bedroom. He's freaking out, asking if David is the guy I've been seeing. I told him he's crazy and that David is my coworker, and he's only here to help me move my stuff. He said he didn't believe me and he wants to see my phone. I told him I didn't have anything to hide, but if he goes through my phone, that's a deal breaker for me. He waited a second before taking my phone and going through it. I stood there watching him open up all my socials, all my texts, and even scroll through all of my pictures. It was almost like a light switch went off in my head, and whatever love I had for him was gone. I felt disgusted. I told him that I was breaking up with him, and he looked shocked. He started apologizing and said he was coming over to tell me to move out and that he wants me to stay with him, but he just freaked out when he saw me here with a guy. That's when I realized that Adam knows I work on Thursdays. So why was he even over here? I asked him this, but he just kept apologizing and begging me to not leave him. Something in me finally snapped, and I screamed at him to get out. I've been mad before, but I've never screamed at anyone like that. He just stared at me, turned around, and left. I immediately picked up my phone and blocked him. I found David in his truck and apologized to him and asked if he could still help me, and he said of course. After we had everything put up in my parents' garage, I went to pay him, and he said I could buy him lunch. I took him up on the offer because it would be cheaper than $100, and I suggested Applebee's. Wow, it was nice getting to vent to someone who saw how crazy Adam was firsthand. After we were done, he went and paid and said I can get him next time. The breakup didn't really hit me until the next day, and even though I cried my eyes out, it felt good, like I got this huge weight off my chest. To be honest, it's almost scary how okay I'm feeling about it all. Maybe it hasn't fully sunk in yet, and I'll miss him when it does, but for now I feel fine. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.